Good evening. I'm Rick Walker with Maverick Multimedia and Maverick News, and I'm here with my handsome and charismatic co-host, Mr.
Brendan Kennedy, the host of the Flow of Discourse podcast. It's great to be here with you again today. Rick, how's it going?
It's going just fine, and we have a ton of stuff to share with everybody tonight. So many developments, and let's get right to this live footage from our reporter on the ground in Ottawa at Parliament Hill, Carla Olson. She's been up there all day shooting all kinds of live stuff, and we've had some, live broadcasts through the day to kind of keep people up to date. And these are the terrorists that Justin Trudeau is afraid of tonight. This is why he has declared war on these. How would you describe these undesirables, Brendan?
Patriotic, country-loving Canadians?
Yeah, this is the national threat that has Justin Trudeau worried enough to invoke the War Measures Act, the modern version, the modern equivalent of the War Measures Act, today known in a softer, kinder, gentler way as the Emergencies Act. Tonight, the nation is in peril, as you can see from all these flag-waving people with unacceptable views. Very, 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 very dangerous. Very dangerous.
And Rick, for the record tonight, it is 0 degrees Celsius in Ottawa, our capital, and it is currently snowing. It's probably going to continue to snow for the rest of the evening.
I want everyone out there tonight to rest easy, knowing that Justin Trudeau has this under control. Now that he has special powers, unprecedented powers, and you've been stripped of your rights, it's okay. You can rest easy tonight, because Justin Trudeau is going to crack down on these people, and pretty soon he's going to send in militarized police to crush this rebellion. These people apparently want to overthrow the country. Oh, there's Carla.
That's that for today, from the stage anyway. There's still, as you can see, a pretty good show of people. It's been a really long, wet, cold. Now it's snowing great big flakes, so I'm sure we're going to have lots of snow. Hopefully there'll be lots of volunteers. Yeah. I don't think the police are coming tonight. Unless they come like
too afraid.
Tonight, in the middle of the night. I can't see them coming.
I wouldn't.
Anyway,
if I was a cop,
need to turn my phone off. I need to put on my gloves.
Yep.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys have enjoyed our walks today. And it's just another day on the hill. I think this is day 15. Anyway, thanks for watching. Be kind. Be Canadian.
We're now in our 20s for this. Actually, this is day 20 something.
Yeah, I think this is day 20, isn't it? Day 20 or day 21? I don't know. The more this goes on, the more absurd the whole thing is, Brendan. But not because of the truckers. It's the government response to it.
Yeah, and today in the House of Commons, brain fart. They've been debating the Emergency Act measures that they're putting in place, and they're going to be debating them until probably Monday when they're going to vote on it. So, they're just, it's like a dog in there chasing its tails, and we're going to look at that absolutely later, and you'll see what I mean. But it just same thing going around and around in a circle.
You know what, man? It's just so. they're all so serious, and they try to sound so academic and learned. Here's the
Learned.
reality. Okay, here's the reality. These politicians, Justin Trudeau especially, they're ridiculous. They have too much power. They're too corrupt, and they have the media in the palm of their hands because they've taken your tax dollars and they've bought everybody off. They've been running the country into the ground, and what we're getting now is all this weird Orwellian doublespeak, misinformation, twisted upside down world where the politicians just keep twisting things. So we just showed you in the first 5 minutes of this broadcast how absurd the government response to this whole bloody thing is. Justin Trudeau is stripping everyone of their rights and standing there saying, but I'm not really stripping you of your rights. Yes, he is. Yes, he has. That's exactly what he has done. Hello, Canada. Are you awake? Are you not aware that by invoking the Emergencies Act, it's the War Measures Act? You have no rights. He took away everyone's rights. Everyone. It's not geographically targeted. It's not targeted at a specific group of people. He can do pretty much anything he wants now because he has declared war on the Canadian people, on Canadian citizens, specifically truckers that he has deemed to be terrorists. The people dancing with Canadian flags are the people that he has declared war upon. I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not saying that in a flippant way. That's what he has done. And he has militarized police. So they've been gathering through the day, increasing their presence in Ottawa in response to this party. It's a party that has been entirely peaceful. They've ginned up a story. They've planted people in the crowd to help create a narrative that is completely contrary to what people are seeing with their own eyes. Then they bring in these talking heads on CBC and CTV and get them to call all of the truckers racists. These are political opponents to Justin Trudeau. They're only opponents because they're opposed to his health measures, which he has really. These measures are designed to give him total power, and that is what he has done this week. He's grabbed total power for himself, and these politicians sitting in Parliament debating it. What's to debate? It's not justified, not even close. Oh, we found some guns out in Coutts, Alberta. So? Police have confiscated guns before from bikers and organized crime figures and others. Police have been able to deal with that kind of thing. That doesn't justify bringing in the War Measures Act and declaring war on an entire segment of the population. Sorry, folks, this is out of control.
You're really right, though, because they're not telling us what region this specifically applies to, and that there's so many provinces that are saying, no, we don't want this, we don't need it. They look so stupid right now for the very fact that most of the things that they created or enacted the Emergency Measures Act for are already cleared up. It's like those problems aren't there anymore. And
that's right. They were resolved before he brought in the Emergencies Act. The issues at the border points taken down, and even then, and we'll get into this more as we learn about the Canadian Civil Liberties Association lawsuit which was announced today against the federal government because of Justin Trudeau's decision to invoke the Emergencies Act or the War Measures Act. We'll get into this more, but even when there are protests at the border, it doesn't justify his response. It's not proportional. He's out of control, and something needs to be done because this is an improper use of that act. It is so dangerous that it's the use of the act that is actually jeopardizing the integrity, and that is the existential threat to Canada as a nation state, is his casual use of this legislation that gives him ultimate power to deal with something that is supposed to be on the scale of a foreign invasion by a foreign army that puts the nation itself in peril. Did that look like footage of foreign soldiers ready to take over the entire country? Did it? I ask you. Open your eyes, folks. Look at what's really going on down there. We'll get into this in more depth very shortly. We've got other stuff to get to, so much to get to tonight. And joining us in a little while will be Convoy 2022 Cruising to the Capital coverage contributor, Rhonda Jubenville. And Rhonda will offer up some of her opinions and her perspectives and give us some analysis on today's events as well. So that will be extremely valuable to us, and we're looking forward to that. And then, of course, our intrepid reporter at Parliament Hill, Carla Olson, will be back with more footage and I think more live stuff, and she'll join us live for a recap near the end of the broadcast.
It's going to be a great show tonight, so buckle in, and it's going to be good.
Yeah. Now, what do you want to go to next here, Brendan? We've got a news conference with the truckers that we can tap into, or we can go to Ottawa's interim police chief, who also who just wrapped up a news conference as well to kind of update people on what the police response is likely to be in the hours and days ahead.
Let's go with the police response, and then we'll go into the trucker conference.
Okay.
Chief. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Bonjour à tous. My name is Steve Bell, and I'm the interim chief of the Ottawa Police Service. I want to thank our partners from the Ontario Provincial Police and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for being here today. With me, I have Deputy Commissioner Chris Harkins of the OPP and Deputy Commissioner Mike Duham of the RCMP. The Ottawa Police Service, the RCMP, and the OPP, as well as numerous police agencies in Ontario and Quebec, are now here in Ottawa. We've been bolstering our resources, developing clear plans, and preparing to take action. The action is imminent. In the past few days, we've been communicating directly with the unlawful protesters. We've told them they must leave, and we have warned them the consequences of disobeying these rules. We want to end this unlawful protest peacefully and safely. We are prepared to employ lawful techniques to remove the unlawful protesters from our streets. Today, I want to speak directly to our residents and our community, specifically the residents and businesses of our downtown core. Your safety, everyone's safety, is our priority. We know that you've been through a lot, and I know that ongoing unlawful protests have caused pain and suffering to you and your loved ones. We're committed to returning your streets back to you and back to normal. We know that increased police presence within the area may be distressing. Our officers are here to help you and your community. They care about the community, and they're here to help keep you safe while we complete this operation. Overnight and into today, we've begun to harden the perimeter around the protests. We're installing fencing and other barriers throughout the area. In furtherance of our efforts to bring our city back to a state of normalcy, we've introduced a secured area. The secured area includes the area from Bronson Avenue to the Canal and from the Queensway to Parliament Hill. The secured area includes almost 100 checkpoints that will have police presence to ensure that those seeking entry to that secure area for a unlawful reason, such as joining a protest, cannot enter the downtown core. Again, I know that these are measures that our community is not used to. They will be in place only as long as necessary to remove the unlawful protests. Our officers are aware of the impact on you, and we're taking every step we can to minimize the impact on our residents and businesses while keeping out those who could do more harm to our community. We want to reassure everyone that if you live, work, or have a lawful reason to be in the area, there will be minimal impacts on your access. Once through the checkpoints, those with a lawful reason will be free to move about. Individuals may leave the secure area at any time. As we continue to increase our actions, we will be communicating them directly to the public. We have open lines of communication with our schools and other institutions in the area. To those engaged in the unlawful protests, if you want to leave under your own terms, now is the time to do it. I'm available to take questions. Thank you.
And I'll invite each media to come to the microphone and ask the question. Please, when you start your question, start with your name and the media you represent. Nous allons maintenant commencer avec les questions. On demande à chacun de se prendre le microphone et vous identifier le média que vous représentez, monsieur.
Hello, Chief Natalie Danroy from CTV Ottawa. Are Ottawa Police asking businesses near the red zone to stay closed for an extended period of time?
So as I indicated, thank you very much for the question. As I indicated, we've developed this secure area where people who live, work, or have lawful reasons to be there are free to come and go. We're just restricting the area from people who have come in over the past number of weeks, particularly on the weekends, as we're getting towards, to be engaged in unlawful activity. We have several officers in the area, both on foot and in vehicles, to ensure the safety and security of the neighborhoods and the areas that surround where the protest footprint is.
What measures are being considered if protesters do not comply, if they do not leave that secure area?
So we've been really clear with everyone since the very beginning. It's time to go. Your time in our city has come to an end and you must leave. We've engaged in interactions with the protesters to attempt to persuade, negotiate with them to leave the footprint of our area. We will continue to do that. But what I can tell you is we have a deliberate plan of action to take in order to make sure that our streets are turned back to our residents and our community is turned back to normal.
Hi, Elizabeth Laplante. I'm from TVA News in Montreal. When are you planning to intervene for the kids in the protest?
So thanks for the question. One of the key concerns that we've had as we've planned and looked at how we want to proceed to end this protest is the number of children that remain in there. We continue to work with our partners from the Children's Aid Society and other social services to look at the best, most safest way to have children removed from the area prior to any sort of police action. We've had members of our police service continue to engage with the protesters to identify that it is not a good place for children to be, that they should make every attempt to remove children from the area. All of our planning has been very considerate of the people that are within the demonstration zone, including the children.
Will they be the first to be removed?
As I indicated, we've worked really hard to make sure all of our plans are very deliberate around protecting children that may be in that footprint.
Mr. Bell, Mackenzie Gray with CTV National News. To be frank, it's been 21 days now, and the residents of this city have been pretty clear that the police in the city have completely bungled dealing with this protest. It's not the first time we've had a press conference here from the police saying there's a new plan to deal with it. So why should any of the residents of the city believe that this time is going to be different?
So thank you for the question. I think you just need to go outside and look at the presence we have right now. We're taking unprecedented steps through support of both federal, provincial legislation, municipal increase in fines for bylaws, as well as injunctions to bring all that together to work with our partners from the OPP and RCMP to amass a plan and amass the resources we need to actually execute that plan. As you're seeing in the occurrence that's happened, the activity that's happened with police over the last day and a half or so, you're seeing a much increased presence of officers. That is to indicate that we are at the end of this protest. We will take what action we need to deliberately, safely, lawfully end these demonstrations.
I'm happy you mentioned going outside, because if you walk down Wellington Street right now, there are two guys in a hot tub and there's a bouncy castle across from them. Can you assure the residents of this city that this will no longer happen and that the parties that have happened on Wellington Street for the last 3 weekends will end this week?
That's what we're here to say today. We absolutely are committed to end this unlawful demonstration. We have the plan, we have the commitment, we have the resources, and we have the amazing partnership of all policing partners to make sure that this unlawful demonstration comes to an end.
Chief Bell, thanks for taking our questions. You're talking about setting up checkpoints, making sure people have a lawful reason to be going downtown. How are these going to work? I've been seeing some reports that people are just asking, oh, why are you going down? Okay, go ahead. So what's going to be stopping protesters from just lying and saying they work downtown or they live downtown?
So as we indicated, we have over 100 checkpoints in this secure area that we've established. Officers are continuing to be informed of the lawful reasons, how they can stop and challenge people, and then looking to ensure that people are entering the area who live there, who work there, or who have a lawful reason, such as a medical appointment, to attend there. Our officers have that information and are intervening on people who are not supposed to be there, stopping them, and allowing people that should be there their lawful right to move around in those areas.
Yeah, and just on the difficulty of dealing with children in the protest, my colleagues have been speaking to some people out there right now who have kids. They're saying it's a completely safe place. They don't plan on leaving anytime soon, and encouraging other families to bring their kids out there. Just how did the police navigate the situation with Children's Aid if people aren't going to be leaving? Do the police plan on coming in and separating families?
So as I indicated earlier, we continue to work with the Children's Aid Society and our planners to make sure that the safety of any children or youth that are in that area, in the footprint of the demonstration, is utmost in our priority as we look to dismantle this demonstration.
Chief Bell, John Willing with the Citizen. Do you have a goal in terms of how many trucks you want to remove from the core daily or even by the end of this long weekend?
So we won't be establishing any goals or targets. What I can tell you is we are continuing to dialogue, discuss with protesters in there, identifying that it is time for them to go, that this is coming to an end, and that we will continue to increase our actions until ultimately everyone is gone from that area. That area is returned to the citizens of Ottawa, and we have normalcy in the downtown core.
Thank you. Have you secured heavy tow availability for the next few days?
We continue to work on our plans. We've developed all those plans, and we aren't seeing any issues with the ability to remove vehicles at this point.
Hi, Chief Bell. It's Joanne Canello from CBC News. A little bit on that same theme. You said earlier it's going to be methodical. It's going to take time. Can you give us a sense of how much time you think it will take? And, we're on to weekend number 4. Are you expecting more, the demonstrator reinforcements, as we say, to come back? Like, what do you see happening over the next little while?
So thank you for the question. What I can tell you is the deliberate steps we've taken to create the secure zone under the powers that have been granted to us under the Federal Emergencies Act are directly aligned to make sure that we don't see the numbers in the demonstration bolstered over the weekend. We have a very deliberate plan that will be methodical and will take time for us to progress through to be able to completely remove anyone from the core. So what I can tell you is this weekend will look very different than the past 3 weekends.
And for people who have kids who are coming to school here, there's a high school nearby, there's a public school, maybe offices. Are you asking people not to come tomorrow? There's concerns from parents, as you can imagine.
So I can absolutely understand that there's concerns from all pockets of our community about what's going on. We continue to work with institutions like the school boards to identify any sort of concerns that may exist within the footprint, and we'll continue to provide public safety or media advisories to all of our community to let them know what's happening, how we progress, and if we have any immediate or emerging safety concerns that people need to know about.
Hi, Chief Bell, Laura Osmond, the Canadian Press. I'm just wondering how critical the Emergencies Act powers that have been granted to you by the federal government are in terms of your plan. Is this something you would have been able to do without that legislation invoked?
So thanks. It's a great question. What I can tell you is we've seen a growing frustration within our community, within the provincial government, within the federal government around the activities that are occurring here. We've also seen the growth in our authorities and ability to actually successfully deal with the demonstration, an unprecedented unlawful demonstration like we're seeing downtown in our core. All of those pieces of legislation and supports we've got from different levels of government have directly and actively contributed to our ability to ultimately say we are in a position to move forward and look to end this demonstration.
Of course, downtown is not the only place that these trucks have been amassing. There are encampments all over the city. More were popping up last weekend. You had to shut down. What assurances can you give people that as you direct people away from the downtown core over the long weekend, as people are trying to flood into Ottawa, that it's not going to end up in their communities?
So I would understand the concern about that, absolutely. What I can tell you is we've had great partnership through the OPP, the RCMP, other municipal police agencies to make sure that we have amassed the number of members, officers, support functions in and around the Ottawa area to be able to make sure that we not only demobilize the demonstration that exists, but that we look at protecting ourselves against just displacing it. Our goal is to take our streets back. Our goal is to actually give the streets of Ottawa back to the community that own it and deserve it. We will continue to do that while trying to ensuring that this doesn't actually just displace to somewhere else.
Hi, Chief Bell. Frederick with Radio Canada. So you mentioned just earlier before that you're still negotiating or speaking with people that own the heavy vehicles over there. So are you still at that point where you're trying to get them to leave on their own, or you're past that point and you know that you're going to have to intervene with force?
So we'll never be past that point. I implore anyone that's there, get in your truck. We will navigate safe passage for you to leave our city streets. We want this to end, this demonstration to end peacefully. We want people to realize that it is coming to an end and not require us to escalate in terms of how we look to deal with demobilizing it. We will never stop trying to get people to leave our streets. That's exactly what we want them to do. Just know that there's a deliberate plan, there's commitment, and there's the resourcing that we now have in place to actually finally end this. But it can be ended by all the demonstrators that sit there by getting in their vehicles and going home.
Are you negotiating or in talks at all with people that are or say that they are at the head of this convoy, organizers per se? Are you negotiating with them at all?
So as I indicated, we continue to negotiate with individuals and with people that represent different pockets within the demonstration group. It is our desire. It is in everyone's best interest. It is absolutely what we want to do, is to have this end peacefully. We want people to go home. We will talk to anyone who we need to talk to for them to go home. But the demonstrators there need to know we have commitment, we have a plan, this needs to end.
And you don't think that there's going to be a fourth weekend of big parties and celebration just like we've seen last weekend?
I can't place any timelines on when it will ultimately culminate. I can tell you it will be a very different picture in the downtown core this weekend than it has been from the previous 3 weekends.
Hi, sir. Charles Gagnon with Le Droit newspaper. Again, talking this morning with truckers inside their truck, they're not coming out, they're not leaving. So how will you enforce whatever you need to enforce? Are you going to take them out of their trucks? How is that going to happen?
So I'm not in a position to be able to give up any of the operational issues that we've discussed. What I can tell you is we've taken into consideration many different circumstances that could exist within the footprint of the demonstration and in and around it. And we're actually planning for several different eventualities. I'll say it again, we want people to peacefully leave. But I can tell you that if they do not peacefully leave, we have plans, strategies, and tactics to be able to get them to leave.
And obviously, I don't know when you guys are going to go in or whatever, but there's still lots of people just walking on Wellington Street and all that are supporting. So what, and they're probably going to continue. What are you saying to these people if they don't want to leave either?
So our message has been pretty consistent around that. And more importantly, the message from our community and our residents has been pretty consistent around that. Do not come to our downtown core. We are tired of what's occurring there. We're sick of what's happening in our streets, so leave our area. We will continue with that message this weekend, but you're seeing an increased enforcement presence, and we won't be allowing people to come down for the unlawful activity of engaging in demonstrations.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes.
What do you think, Brendan?
This is a very good example of how the press works for the government and no longer for the people. Everything that they had talked about, every question that they had talked about, pretty much egged the police on to go forward and go in with heavy action across the board. Oh, bouncy castles and hot tubs. I just saw one outside. It's atrocious. Very clearly, they are being government-paid shills, in the very least. I'm actually pretty appalled at this point that what the police are going to try and do. So it's very clear that they're going to try and they have all these perimeters set up, and they're going to try their best to not let people through, whatever that's going to mean. Clearly, they're going to have some kind of plan for people who have families there. We've heard before there's probably about 100 families that are with the convoy groups and that they are aware of them. And I think that'll be probably the number one indicator that they're going to move, is you'll see these families get separated at some point, and it's not going to look pretty. They're also forgetting in this entire press conference that they just did that Ottawa doesn't just belong to Ottawa. It belongs to all of Canada. It is our nation's capital. It is not something that is just beholden to them. So there's a lot of crap spinning around there. They keep saying they have a plan, but it's looking kind of like at this point that the more government you throw at a problem, the more incompetent it becomes. So remains to be seen, but they're definitely been pushed by the government to a certain point where they're going to have to act on this. Too much pressure.
And there's tonight's awesome contributor, Rhonda Jubenville. How are you tonight, Rhonda? She's trying to get herself situated. Can you hear us okay? I don't think
Rhonda?
she's got her audio on yet. She's trying to figure out how to use the camera.
Uh-oh.
I'll just pull Rhonda off so she can get herself all set up there, and we'll go back to her. I'll say this. I think the tone, I liked the tone from the interim chief much better than I liked the tone from the previous chief Slawley.
That's a good point.
I greatly appreciate the chief focusing on safety and bringing it to a peaceful resolution his priority. That, I think, is proper. The media, obviously, is focused and is cheerleading the move, the initiative to bring the demonstration to an end. I still take exception to the idea that this protest is unlawful. It may be disruptive, but it is, and there may be some legal aspects to it, but it is not, I don't think it is unlawful. And we can get into the nuance of this, the details, the ins and the outs of all of this stuff as well a little later when we get into the Civil Liberties Association lawsuit against the federal government and what I mean by all of that. Okay, this is more akin to a labor dispute in my view, and that's the approach I think that these truckers, that even the whole, the use of the phrase "hold the line," that's like holding a picket line, right? Hold the line. That's what that means. This is like the equivalent of a large labor dispute. Even what they were doing at the border points, it was not unprecedented. And the Civil Liberties Association even refers to that today in their news, so we'll hear more from them shortly. And Rhonda's microphone is muted. Hello, Rhonda. Can you hear us?
Oh, it's muted again.
Hi. No, it's muted on her end, not on mine. So I'm going to pull her off again while she gets herself set up there. I don't know why we can't hear her, but she'll figure it out. So
She's a good
yes, you know, they're the interim chief, the tone a little bit better. Today, what we saw, we did go live early this morning because one of the truckers sort of set off an alarm saying that the cops were coming, because he did spot, and some others spotted, about 7 buses in the area of the downtown driving around. I think they might have been bringing in officers that did show up, that we did show people this morning, but they were not in riot gear or crowd control gear. They were still just dressed sort of in their regular street cop clothes with yellow vests, and they proceeded to hand out more literature warning people that they have to leave. But there were a lot more of them today.
I know.
Can you hear us now, Rhonda?
There it goes. Oh.
Can you hear us?
Canada just texted me, your mom's mic is muted, help her.
No, still can't hear us. But and there were about 100 different police cruisers that were reported in and around the downtown area. And some of those ended up parking in strategic locations. But most of those vehicles, including the buses, ended up going over to a convention center where there's also a Holiday Inn there. And it looked like they went in and the officers were taking part in some sort of a meeting rather than actually being deployed in the area. So not really clear what was going on. Of course, police not, as you heard from the interim chief, they're not going to reveal their operational strategies, but definitely a police buildup. And as Carla reported after that, as we went live and it looked like police were moving in, they did move in, as we reported, but not in riot gear. They've moved in a lot more officers today, but just in street clothes. And they did not take any kind of aggressive action. They kept warning people that you have to leave now or we'll be coming, and we will be enforcing this law, that law, the other law attached to this law. We're going to come for you, and arrests will happen. So that's what they're being told. What else happened down there? They started putting up fencing all over the place. Fencing, steel fencing around the Parliament buildings. So they're fortifying, and as the interim chief said, hardening the area. And I get that. That's part of their strategy. To me, it was similar to what we saw in Washington during the January 6th event, where they started putting up huge fences and barbed wire, and they left that in place because they're so afraid of the people. Well, in this case, they're afraid of the people too, but this in Ottawa has been an entirely different atmosphere, an entirely different set of circumstances. And as Carla has reported again today, and as we've reported through the past 3 weeks, there has been no evidence or any indication that anyone is planning on trying to storm or even enter the Parliament buildings in any unlawful way at all. Hello, can you hear us now?
I made it.
There you are.
Yeah, I think it's an Android thing, so I'm on an Apple product. So
okay.
I don't know. I'm here.
Welcome, tonight's contributor.
Thank you.
Rhonda Jubenville, and thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, finally.
So I don't know if you were able to hear or see any of what we were just broadcasting and talking about. The interim police chief saying that they're determined to bring this protest to an end in Ottawa.
Yes.
So, the former chief resigned. Was it 2 days ago, Brendan? I'm losing track.
2 days ago. 2 days.
2 days ago, and then 2 members of the Police Services Board were turfed.
Well, one was resigned, and then one they had council vote to turf Diane Deans, who is the one who wanted to deputize herself and go down there and start popping bouncy castles and tearing down hot tubs and that
Can
sort
I
of
play
thing.
that clip again? Can I play
Yes.
that?
It's a good one.
Oh, where she wants to, where she deputizes herself. I wanted to go down there.
I wanted that. Well, just let her speak for herself. And even the chief referring to the, there were two people down there in a hot tub, and the bouncy castles were back again. This after they removed them, and Justin Trudeau declared a state of war. Anyway, this was Diane Dean. So this woman in the top left corner, she's pissed.
Same thing. I want it as much as anybody else. Believe me. We have to put a structure in place that we believe will get this job done as expeditiously as possible. And I guess, Chief Bell, we're all getting to our breaking point. Maybe I'm too, but one of my frustrations has been when we expect action, we don't see it. It's a problem. We expected Coventry Road, we sort of got half the job done, and then there seemed to be a backing away. It took way too long in Confederation Park. This weekend, when we said that we were going to put protesters, more strongly than we have in the past, we had a chaotic carnival on Parliament Hill. I tell you, I wanted to go up there and park that damn hot tub myself and unplug the bouncy castle. You couldn't understand why we weren't doing just those things that were poking the fingers in the eye of our house, of Parliament, of our democracy, and of our city. And
How atrocious.
Somebody deputize that woman now. Give her a badge and a gun.
This whole thing is just so absurd. It just gets stupider and stupider and stupider.
We're in the twilight zone.
Oh my God.
Do you see my new cup? Can you read it? It's backwards.
Yeah, it's backwards.
Oh.
Proud.
Let's see how well you can do that, Brendan.
Proud member of a small fringe minority with unacceptable views. There we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I did that without my glasses.
I think you knew what it said anyway without reading it.
So I don't know, man. Like now that woman, Diane Deans, she got turfed.
Yes.
She was the chair, and they turfed her yesterday. There was something going on with the way that they went about they're hiring a new chief, and it's the former chief from Waterloo, and I guess proper procedure wasn't followed or something. Anyway, big problems, and so she's gonzo. But I thought that was hilarious. It just shows, that their perspective on this is just so skewed, and they're so detached from reality that these bouncy castles and hot tubs are a threat to our democracy.
It
right?
is.
It's that serious.
It really puts things in perspective. The logic of some people that they think that is a bad thing, right? So, but I guess if you have to find something bad, then I guess you would. I saw another clip, and I think it was the same lady, and that's what she was talking about. But it was more singled out. I don't know. It might have been just her talking.
She's the one. She's also the one who said that this was a national insurrection.
Right.
That was her.
Okay.
A national insurrection. That quote, nationwide, all the news services picked it up. It was that kind of language that helped fuel and justify Justin Trudeau's invocation of the Emergencies Act, which is, people, it's the War Measures Act. He declared war on his own people.
Yeah, and the military wants nothing to do with it. So,
but
they
behind the
know,
scenes,
they know who they take their marching orders from.
But behind the scenes, I guarantee the military is involved. Trudeau just doesn't want the military down there. He doesn't want soldiers down there. The optics are not good. You see, you can't have a bunch of soldiers go in to take down a goddamn bouncy castle.
Right.
It's a complete misuse of our resources, and it would be it's ridiculous. But I guarantee you they're using the military for intelligence. They've got consultants in there helping police with strategy and so on.
Mhm.
So that's all going on now, because that's one of the things that the use of this act will allow.
I watched a lady, she's a lawyer, I forget her name. Anyway, she was basically saying that we, as citizens of Canada, we need to call on the military to defend us.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. It sounds like some sort of third world country coup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is
we are
sort of
we are a
dangerous.
third world
dangerous
country
talk.
right now. We aren't a normal democratic country. Like, this is not normal, and anybody that thinks it is not thinking right. So,
Are you afraid? Does it scare you, Rhonda?
what's happening right now?
Yes. Well, overall, and the use of the modern equivalent of the War Measures Act. Are you afraid of that?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't even know if it's going to pass. Like, I don't know if it will pass in the Senate. So,
Well, I mean, but it's in effect right now. It takes
I
effect
know.
immediately, so he's
I
using
know.
it, right?
And this lawyer that I was following, I mean, there's so many people that profess to know the law, and she was actually saying that it's illegal that they have invoked it without it being tabled in Parliament first. It was supposed to be in Parliament before it can be invoked. So I don't know. Apparently, there's lawyers contesting it and whatnot. So I have no idea. I don't know what
It
to
is.
believe.
It is the first time this version of the act has
I
ever
know.
been used. So I think that's why there has been some confusion and debate
and
around its use,
I-
right?
I watched some MPs on their own private feeds, and they were saying that they had to research it because they didn't even know the legalities of it. So I just think there's a lot of unanswered questions. A lot of people don't know really what the legalities are with
Well,
it.
yeah,
So,
the information we have is that it takes effect immediately, because if you see it's written that way because if we were being invaded by a foreign country and they
Right.
sent their army here
Right.
and they were like, the fighter jets are on the way, right?
Yeah,
They've
you
launched
can't
their
wait.
ICBMs.
Right.
We don't have 7 days, so
No,
it
I
takes
know.
effect immediately. But then Parliament has to debate it within 7 days.
Yeah.
And then they have to vote on it. And then the Senate gets to look at it as well, because it is such a serious step. So the Senate is there, as always, to provide what they call sober second thought on
Right.
important legislative matters, right?
Mhm.
And so it's a safety net to save the country. That's why the Senate gets to look at it. And that's why it scares the living daylights out of me, because if Justin Trudeau gets to keep this power for any length of time, it makes him like the supreme ruler of Canada.
Yeah.
It effectively strips everyone of their rights. And
Big
you've
time.
seen that. They're now using this as justification to go after bank accounts, freeze assets, take trucks away from people.
And you know what? They say that this doesn't violate people's charters, but I would say that if you donated to the trucker convoy, that is an association which you are at your own liberty to choose.
Mhm.
You are free to associate, including with the trucker convoy.
But
So if
people
you-
people have been fired for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That was new to me.
Yep, they're getting fired. It was
It was
a
the
lady.
communications director for a branch of the Ontario government that deals with the enforcement of laws.
Yeah.
And she donated $100 to the GoFundMe campaign
Mhm.
Give, Send, Go. And then that donor list was hacked
Right.
and then distributed. Now, there's so much going on around all of this. I really have to, it's all very suspect to me. And who has the ability to hack into something like that? It's someone with some real smarts, like maybe
Yes.
someone who works for the military or the government. And I mean, it's no small thing to do that. It could have been an individual, and we actually have a clip of someone who has accepted responsibility for hacking into it. But the more disturbing thing to me is that that list was then made public, distributed to a bunch of left-wing socialist activists, including some media personalities, who then took it upon themselves to publish it.
Yeah, they're doxing people.
Yeah, basically. And
Yeah.
you know this would be a huge uproar if somebody did that to BLM on GoFundMe and they
Absolutely.
doxed everybody who voted for it. It would be a huge uproar. FBI would begin investigating like immediately. CSIS would begin investigating immediately. It would be a huge problem.
There's no way it can be legal. I think anybody that distributes that information is leaving themselves wide open to a lawsuit. So, this is the dude who claims he hacked into it. This is Canadian. He's a Canadian. His name is Aubrey Cottle. He says that he calls himself a cyber terrorist. Self-described. I didn't call him that. That's what he says he is. And he's taking responsibility for the illegal Give, Send, Go data breach, which occurred on Sunday. Now, I'm going to play this clip from this dude. And I have to warn everyone, you might want to, if you have children in the room, you might want to, cover their ears or something, because there's some language in here. So I'm forewarning you. Okay, here we go. I'm going to play it. This Aubrey guy, Mr. Punk Hair, he just brace yourself. Okay, here we go.
Nothing scares me. Nothing. Yes, I doxed the truckers. I did it. It was me. I hacked Give, Send, Go, baby. And I do it again. I do it 100 times. I did it. I did it. Come at me. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me, huh? I hacked Epic Hosting! I hacked Parler! I hacked Gab! I hacked Truth Social! I hacked Go! Give, Send, Go! I don't care! You can literally put my name into the news tab on Google, and you can find everything I've done! I am literally in every mainstream media publication for the things that I do. I'm not an unknown actor. I'm literally a famous fucking cyber terrorist. And you think that you can scare me? See, they always default to the pedophile accusations. They always default to that because they have nothing else. It's actually some projection. That guy, I want to see his browser history. That guy loves little girls. I've hunted pedophiles. I've outed pedophile rings online. I have gotten pedophiles arrested, buddy. You have no idea who the hell I am. There isn't proof of shit, you fucking lying little cunt.
Oh.
Die!
Oh.
I'm going to restart this live.
Oh.
Come back.
No, I don't think so. Oh my.
Now that scares me. He scares me. He scares me more than Justin Trudeau.
I don't believe that's the guy who did it.
I don't either. I think he just wants some notoriety. So he thought, oh, this is a good thing I can tap into.
Unfortunately for him, he says there's no proof, but an admission might work against him a public admission on social media might work against him in a court of law.
Well, he's right about one thing. He is a terrorist. I'm absolutely terrified, and I think that is
he's terrorizing me.
Reprehensible, morally.
So he clearly doesn't care for the truckers. So I'm going to ask folks, which side would you rather be on?
Why do all these weirdos always have elaborate colored hair?
I don't know, but you see how crazy and weird everything's getting?
Yeah.
It's every day stranger and weirder, right?
It is. Like they said, it's the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. So where are you at with all of this, Rhonda? What have you been seeing? You know, I think you've been involved or you've been talking to people sort of at the local level, right?
Yeah.
Is there much support for the truckers that way?
I have some people that have gone to Ottawa, like some friends that have been in Ottawa, and they've sent me lots of feeds privately. So I see what's going on down there. I mean, we all see it. We see that it's not, and there's no violence. It's men and women keeping the streets clean. They've never been so clean. The homeless are being fed. They're looking after the unknown soldier. They're looking after Terry Fox, the monuments. So I cannot understand why people think it's a bad thing. I mean, I've seen there's lanes available for anyone to drive through if they needed to, what I see anyway. And if there's something being blocked, it might be being blocked by the police. I don't know, but it appears that there's a throwaway everywhere where the truckers are. So and they're not honking their horns. I mean, I think they do a little bit throughout the day. So I just don't understand why anybody would have a problem with it. And I really am starting to believe that nobody really does have a problem with it, except for Justin Trudeau and his Liberals. Like, that's what I'm really starting to believe.
Do you think it's a fair assessment to, and this is somewhat speculation, but I mean, we've seen this before where, you know, there's a clear political divide here, right? You have sort of these far left wing people who are very much opposed to this because they love the mandates, they love the lockdowns, they love the vaccines, they want all these authoritarian measures, they want the vaccine passports, they want all of that stuff. And they see this as a big threat, right? And a lot of their stuff is falling apart. But, you know, we've seen in the past that they're very organized. And so you get those people together and they start, and you say, okay, Joe, you take your group and you start making all these phone calls to the cops to level all these complaints. And then Sally, you go over there and you take your team and you're going to, find ways to attack these truckers on social media.
Right.
I mean, to me, it feels like an organized thing. And that Diane Deans from the Police Services Board, she strikes me as a far left wing activist who, like many people who are politically active, found her way into a position of influence and power on that Police Services Board. And she was using that to fuel a lot of this, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a fair assessment, that a lot of this apparent outrage and these complaints that police are using as justification for the crackdown, because they have to respond to public complaints, do you think that it's organic and genuine, or is some of this sort of, or maybe all of it or majority of it, I wouldn't say all, but would you say that a lot of it is generated through a campaign, an organized, choreographed campaign?
I do believe that, because I think that's how Liberals operate. They are very together, and they are very supportive, and they're almost with each other till the death. And even your Democrats, they're same thing. They have each other's backs no matter what.
Yeah.
So yes, I do believe that once they see something happening, they're going to tap right into it and go full throttle with it. So yeah, I believe a lot of it is being instigated by a few, maybe, not a lot. So I know a lot of people who are liberal who do not want this to be happening. They just want they want our life to be back to how it was. So
Yeah. Yes.
I've seen a lot of that too. And
I
that's a
don't
good
know
point.
that it's, I don't know that it's a liberal conservative thing. At this point, I honestly think it's a good versus evil thing. I really do. I just think, Justin Trudeau has an agenda and a very nefarious agenda. And I honestly don't think he's going to back down. He is not going to back down. I think this is going to get uglier. But am I scared? No, I'm not scared, because I do think it's going to end in a good way eventually, but we might just have a little bit of storm get to the sunny skies. So
That's a good point you made about how organized it is, and we've shared the footage on this very show here where we had seen anti-protest members flying the QP Public Service Union flag in conjunction with the communist flag. And so these public service unions are exquisitely liberal, and they back the Liberal and NDP parties exquisitely.
Absolutely.
And the proof is in the pudding, and it's out there for everybody to see. And I would question, how much money did the union spend on doing that anti-protest? How much resource did they put into planning that protest? And do they support the very fact that they had a commie flag flying with them? Like, it is very organized and targeted, and they've always had quick means of organizing quickly against things that they disagree with.
Well, they have lots of money. So when you have lots of money, you can do lots of things.
Big time.
Yeah. We have that arrest of, hang on just a moment. I'm going to cue that up for you. I'll let you guys chat for a minute while I deal with this here. Hang on just a second.
So you said, Rhonda, that there's going to be a bit of a storm yet to come.
I think so.
I've been kind of thinking the same thing as well.
This isn't over yet. So
No.
I wish it was, but it's not over yet. I don't know. I mean, even provincially, the mandates most of the mandates are going to be done March 1st. I listened to Dr. Kieran Moore today. He was alluding to the fact that they're going to be visiting the whole masking thing come March 15th. And I just found he was really backpedaling a lot. And he was saying maybe that, it's true what he said, that none of the vaccination mandates were implemented from the province. None of them were. And that's true. None of them were. But they really forced it upon all of the employers, like the corporations, the small business, the health, the hospitals, the long-term care.
Directive 6 authorized employers, especially in the medical field, I believe, to be allowed to impose vaccinations on people. Do you believe in the Ontario government when they say they're going to be lifting these things? Because we've all heard this story before.
I don't hold my breath for anything that Doug Ford says anymore. I mean, I don't. I have no faith. I've lost all. I mean, I voted for Doug Ford, but I have no faith in the provincial Conservatives, none at all. So I don't.
The bigger problem, guys, with regard to that is even though Ford is getting rid of the vaccine passport provincially, apparently the federal government is looking at implementing a national vaccine passport. So it's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
So what would that national passport, to be imposed provincially?
Yeah, we don't have details on it at this point, but that is the word that Trudeau is getting ready to implement some sort of a national vaccine passport. Now, I don't know how the legislation deals with that exactly, because healthcare is primarily a provincial purview.
Right.
The federal government, though, is responsible for transfer payments, and there is, the federal government has some jurisdiction, some authority when
Right.
it comes to healthcare. And one of the reasons, or one of the ways they're justifying this, apparently, is because they're saying that some countries don't recognize provincial vaccine passports. So they're looking at rolling out a national plan that then will address that issue, which would be, extremely, it would be in line with the whole initiative to globalize, if you will, Canada's entire. It's in line with this global governance view,
Right.
which makes Canada less of a. It gives up more of Canada. It doesn't give up our sovereignty exactly, but it integrates Canada into more of an international. It's one more step toward taking Canada to what Justin
Yeah.
Trudeau calls the world's first post-nation state.
Right.
So here's this arrest today. This is one of the organizers for the truckers, and he was taken into custody and apparently charged with mischief.
Don't worry, we'll make the calls, Chris.
Call my wife.
Yeah. We'll make the
Put this
calls.
on social media right away.
Yeah.
So this part of the police strategy clearly to continue to sort of chip away to weaken the protest.
Do we know how they arrested him? Like, what was he doing?
I'm not sure of the circumstances. I suspect he was probably heading into the area or
I have no
something.
idea.
Who knows? I don't know.
Okay.
They just picked him up.
That's a nice 50 arrest. That's awesome.
I don't think it was like he was
Just doing their job. Have a good day, guys.
just doing their job.
They have no reason.
It's not an excuse.
That's the thing when you charge people for mischief.
That was Christopher Barber, by the way, the one of the organizers of the the trucker side.
Mm-hmm.
When you charge people for mischief, it is almost like a blanket term, and there's bloody nothing you can do about it till it goes to a judge, and then
That's right.
and then the judge gets to decide. It's one hell of a process, really.
It's lawfare, right? And
Yeah.
and so the charge itself is punishment, because then you have to get a lawyer, then you have to go to court, and it becomes a big inconvenience and an expense, and you run up big legal bills and right? So yeah, charged him with mischief.
So I watched a police officer. I'm not sure. Actually, it was just a couple hours ago. He did a video from today. Don't know where he was from. He did show his face though, but and you could tell he was a police officer and he was sitting in his cruiser. But he put a call out to all of his local police officers, especially in the Ottawa area, and any OPP or RCMP that were there. And he basically just, was saying to them, do some soul searching and make sure if this is what you really want to be known for, because police officers, they have the ability to use their discretion. That's a gift. I think it's a gift that a police officer can. A police officer, actually, I shouldn't say that. There are some things that he or she has to follow through with, but there's other things that they can use their own discretion for. So I think for the things that they can use their discretion for, I really hope that a lot of police officers will do that and back off in some situations where they don't have to do something. For example, did they have to charge that guy with mischief? Probably not. So,
Well, I think that they had orders to go pick him up And the mischief charge, it's not like they're charging him for doing something mischievous on the street at the moment. That mischief charge is related to his actions with regard to organizing the protest.
Right.
So they're targeting him. That's one of the first things that police will do in a situation like this is they'll target the leaders, right?
Yeah.
To again chip away at this. And the interim chief, he didn't give you exact organizational strategy, but we have a pretty clear picture of what they're going to be doing over the next couple of days. And it starts with stuff just like that. It starts with putting up the fences, hardening the perimeter, and then what they'll do is they'll try to pull the people out of there slowly.
Right.
If someone leaves, they don't get back in. If people show up, they try to prohibit people from going in. I don't know how they're going to do that, but because they're restricting people's movements, freedom of movement throughout the whole downtown and throughout the area around the Parliament buildings.
And there's going to be an influx, a huge influx again come Friday, guaranteed.
Starting tomorrow. Yep.
I don't know how they're going to keep these people out because I probably know 20 people that are going up. So, and I mean, that's just from Chatham. So,
and the truckers are asking for people to go, right? Please come, they say, please come. There's strength and safety in numbers.
Yeah.
So that's their strategy. They want to fill it up with as many as they can. Police want to reduce the numbers through attrition. And as we've seen, they arrested that organizer and they'll go after the other ones now, piece by piece, taking them out. And that's sort of a big part of their strategy.
Well, what this police officer did end saying, he said, if you do get arrested, meaning the protesters, he said, just take comfort in knowing that most of these fines, tickets, arrests, whatever, they're not standing up in court. He said he said you could fill an ocean with all of these things that are getting thrown out. So,
right.
I don't know. I mean, and that could just be the scare tactic that they're going to arrest them and get them out of there, and then know that nothing's going to nothing will come to fruition with it, and they'll just be on their merry way. I don't know. So,
yeah, so it's the same with like handing out those leaflets. You have to leave now, or you're going to charge you. We're going to do this. We can do that.
But was that even from the Ottawa police? Did that even come?
Oh, yes.
Like, is there
100%.
proof? Is there proof of that?
Oh yeah,
Because-
they said that they were handing it out, and we saw and have video of the police liaison officers.
Okay.
They had a whole crew of them down there handing those out. Absolutely, it came from police. No question about it.
Okay.
And our journalist in the street, she received one personally, and she put it up on her.
Well, I saw it. I did see it, and then
Yeah.
I went on and I looked at the Ottawa police. It just looked different. The logo didn't look the same, so I just thought.
Yeah, it was also pointed out there was no date on it. A bunch of other
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, there was a couple things that I thought, was this even from the Ottawa police, or was it somebody that they hired to do it, or bylaw, or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. They were liaison officers was what it
Okay.
said on the back. So I don't think they used their like a full constable. I'm not sure what that is. What is a liaison officer? I'm not sure, but definitely authorized by Ottawa Police Service to go
Okay.
in there and hand out those flyers. And we heard the police chief refer to it in that news conference as
Right.
well.
Yes.
That's how they're communicating to the truckers.
Right.
Here it is in writing, handing it to you so that you are aware. And that's why some of the truckers just refuse to accept it, because then they're saying, well, nobody told me. So they go to court and they say, I didn't know. No one told me, because they're not telling them verbally. They want to hand it to them as a piece of paper.
Right.
It's a legal thing, right? And
But
I'm
how
not a
do they-
lawyer, but that's
How do they know?
my assessment.
I mean, how do they know who they handed it to? Right? When there's hundreds of them there, how do they know?
Yeah.
I did see a video of an elderly lady that one of these officers handed it to her, and she took it and she crumpled it up and threw it on the ground. And I forget what he said to her. Basically, you can't do that, and that's important, and you have to follow it, and you can't be here. And she says, I'm an 83-year-old woman. I've lived here in a free country, and I'm going to die in a free country. So if I want to bring food to these men and women, then arrest me. That's what she said to him. So,
yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like the measures are awfully extreme. They've tried to prevent them from bringing in food, water, fuel. They stole the fuel, which I'm sure was unlawful. So you basically turned your cops into criminals and sent them
and I
in
heard they
and said,
contaminated it when it got returned.
Yes, I heard that as well. I didn't see it. I can't
No,
confirm it, but I
me
wouldn't be
neither.
surprised.
I can't even confirm that it was returned. I didn't see anything about that.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I don't know.
I saw a video that they had, but I didn't see anybody in uniform in it, and I didn't see anything like that. So I'm not sure if it was returned or not. I'm going to lean on the side of probably not, but I wasn't there, so
Right.
I didn't see direct evidence of it, right? So it's bit.
Yeah, who knows? I try to deal in facts as much
Yeah,
as
I know.
I can, right?
I know.
So
I get
so
it.
who
It's
knows?
more credible.
But that's why too. Like even the confiscation of these weapons at Coots.
Mhm.
I want more details on that. I want to know. I want names of the people charged. I want to know what their connections are. Who are these people? Who are they really affiliated with?
Mhm.
Were they really? The police even said that they weren't really with the main group of truckers. They were sort of like this separate
Right.
group. The timing seemed awfully convenient. The same, coming out at the exact same time that Justin Trudeau's trying to justify bringing in or invoking the Emergencies Act.
Mhm.
I just don't know. And we've seen crazy things, improper things happen in the past, and I'm always skeptical of everything. So I don't know.
And I mean, I just need to remind everybody that the RCMP pretty much orchestrated or helped an individual orchestrate somewhat of a terrorist attack, and then when 0 hour hit, they just swooped in and oh look, he tried to blow everything up. We got to arrest him now.
Sir, what are you referring to, Brent? I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, there was an incident in the 2000s where the RCMP helped somebody orchestrate or build a bomb, and then when he went to go plant the bomb, they swooped in and charged him. So, essentially, the RCMP established like this terrorist incident, and then swooped in and arrested him and said, "Oh, look at the good work we did."
Okay, well, if we're going to say stuff like that, we better verify, confirm. So I don't know. I don't want
Please
to accuse
verify.
Okay, well, verify it for me because we just said something on air, and I don't want to accuse the RCMP without the details. So that was just a thing that happened sometime in the 2000s. That's too vague for me. I want to know. So you better get me some facts on that. Otherwise, the RCMP is going to come knock on my door
Knocking on
and
Rick's
yours
door.
and Rhonda's. I'll be the first one to go to jail because you'll
And my
probably get
parents-
off. Actually,
my
you'll probably
parents are
say
in the
Rick
picture
Rick
there.
told me to say it. He says it was all Rick's idea, and
It
then
is
I'm
his
going to be
idea.
in the slammer.
He's gonna find it, Rick. I can tell.
Okay.
He's on a mission. I can see it in his eyes.
You guys didn't hear about this?
No, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
We know that police services have done things like this in the past, right? And we've seen it a lot in the States. We saw it with the plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, and the majority of the people in the militia were actually FBI undercover agents who were sort of egging on a few people to try and do some stuff.
Right.
And that is a fact that has come out.
Poor Gretchen.
So that is true. They do engage in things like that. And but man, if I'm going to accuse the RCMP of something or say that they did something, I want verification and facts. So until that time, let's be very clear. That is, we don't come arrest me right now. Okay, I didn't say it. I didn't.
That's
it was
right.
all Brendan's idea.
It's Brendan. Okay, I got to point in the right direction. That guy right there.
I'll see if I can get you bail, Brendan.
That's okay.
I think he's going to find it.
I hope so. Otherwise, you have to take it all back. You have to do a take back.
A take back? Okay.
Yeah, because
So are you scared, Rick?
I'm petrified, Rhonda, to
Are
be
ya?
quite frank. Yes, this to me is it's more than overreach. I
Oh
think
my
this whole
gosh.
thing has been planned from the beginning. I think this is exactly what the objective was, and it's just one more milestone toward an even bigger objective,
Mhm.
which is to transform fundamentally this country into what Justin Trudeau years ago referred to as the world's first post-nation state. And that's because he is a student and a graduate of the Klaus Schwab
Schwab.
School
Yeah.
and for young political leaders. And their focus is on world or global governance.
Right. One world.
And I feel that I don't feel, I'm quite certain that what we are truly involved with here is a form of warfare that
Mhm.
is modern, sophisticated, and being waged in a new way. It's an information war, which is why we are on here tonight.
Mhm.
And it is a political war. It's a war that is being waged through lawfare. And the objective, the strategy, not the objective, the strategy is to undermine our Constitution, undermine the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and strip it away so that they can strip Canadians of their rights to tear down Canada as a sovereign nation and reestablish it as a state under a global government.
Right.
And I fear that what we are seeing here through the implementation or the invocation of the modern version of the War Measures Act is it's giving Justin Trudeau so much power.
Mhm.
And I don't think he will give it up for any time soon after taking that power.
Mm-mm.
And it will move the needle way further over toward destroying Canada as we have known it.
Right.
And reestablishing it as it will be the first Western country to fall in what is a global or world war.
Mhm.
That is what is, in my view, going on. And the first country to fall under the umbrella of this global government and its control. That may sound crazy to some people, but that's only because you have not exposed yourself to the information.
Well, it's not crazy. It's very real. I mean, anybody could access that information that Justin Trudeau has subscribed to Klaus Schwab's, one world order, his World Economic Forum. It's all there.
Yeah.
So if people think that you're crazy or you have a conspiracy, they just haven't done their own research.
It's all factual.
Yes, it is all factual. And I mean, all of these things that have been happening I agree with you. They're leading up to his agenda and to carry out his master plan. So, and I mean, I don't even give Justin Trudeau that much credit to have a master plan, because I really don't think he's not really that smart of a guy. He's being orchestrated by somebody else. So,
he's a puppet.
Yeah, he's a puppet. He's just doing what he's been told to do. And that's why I think he's going to fight till the death to carry this out. So it's going to be hard for us to fight him on it. So he's not, like, he's a sociopath. He's not mentally well. I'm not saying it to be, against liberals. I just don't think the man is mentally stable. I really don't, because everybody has to know at this point of the game, this is not about a virus and it's not about a vaccine. It's not. And for anyone that still believes it, I implore them to open up their eyes to see that this is so much more. It's not about vaccines, and it's not about viruses, and it's
absolutely
way beyond that. And I think if the more people that wake up to that and realize that, and I think a lot of it, I mean, I know some people that, you know, they were following along with everything, got their vaccines, you know, we have to do it. It's science, it's for the greater good. But I do know there are people that are waking up now. And I always tell people, the people that have been awake all the entire time, be very welcoming to those people, and don't make them feel like fools, because you don't want to alienate them when they make their realization and have their aha moment that, like, oh my gosh, you were right, or you knew what was going on and we didn't listen to you. You know, I would never say, told you so. Just say, yeah, I know. Isn't it crazy? So, and I have a few people like that in my life. So I'm just like, yeah, come along and see what's really happening.
Yes.
So-
In fact, today I spoke to a gentleman who had been vaccinated. Okay. Fair enough. And now he's like, I don't want the booster. Well, why not? Because I only did it to get my freedoms back, and now I can't have them.
Right.
They lied to me.
Yes.
Okay. So what does that tell you? I mean, and it's been like that every step of the way. And all of these things that people said, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. That's just everything has fallen into place.
I know. The
vaccine passports were just a conspiracy theory. The, bringing in the War Measures Act, which is this.
Right.
That's what this is. They wouldn't do that. Well, he just did.
I know.
Right. It's part of it's a plan.
I know.
And they're rolling it out. And they've used the virus as a justification and an excuse to do all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using this protest as they twist it, right? They take it and they flip the reality upside down. You can see on the street that you got guys in a hot tub with bouncy castles, but then these are terrorists.
Right.
Right. And then you see these people on CBC, these talking heads yakking about terrorists. And in the background, it's like people in bouncy castles waving Canadian flags, but they're terrorists.
I know.
Guess what?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have to do a take back.
Excellent.
You found it. Yay.
Okay, let's bring it up and we'll save the day. There you go.
There you go. RCMP entrapment of BC couple in legislature bomb plot was travesty of justice, court ruled.
Oh.
There you go.
So basically, the RCMP entrapped this couple to build pressure cooker bombs and plant them at the BC legislature. The justice also found that the police essentially directed the couple on how to commit the crime because they weren't capable of figuring it out themselves. And so this went to the Court of Appeals, and the appeals court said, yeah, this is a travesty of justice. So
what year was this, Brendan?
This was it started in 2016. No, they were arrested in 2016, and in 2018 they won their appeals. So it's an example of the RCMP basically directing a quote-unquote terror plot and then going in and saying, oh, look, we caught these terrorists here. Haha.
Yeah. And were they accused of being like far right-wing radicalized nut jobs, or what is it?
Yeah, they were accused of being like Islamic terrorists.
Okay.
And I guess the husband had said some radical things in their mosque, and so the Muslim community reported them to the RCMP. The RCMP came in, and then they directed them how to run this attack. After that, the rest was history. So
yeah,
RCMP does it.
I didn't doubt you. I'm just saying, if we're gonna say something, we need to back it up. And now this honestly strengthens what we've been saying, or at least what I've been saying, about wanting more information about that the confiscation of those weapons out in Alberta. And I'll say this too, the confiscation of those weapons, even that doesn't even come close to meeting the threshold for invoking the Emergencies Act.
Right.
Because
No, it doesn't.
police deal with things like that all the time, whether it's an organized crime thing or some guy with some guns stored in his house that they go in and confiscate. Police can deal with these things. You don't need to declare war.
It's extreme overreach. I mean, and when he declared his Emergency Measures Act, he was referring to Coots. He was referring to the one in Surrey, BC. He was referring to the Ambassador Bridge and the one in Emerson, Manitoba. But I mean, they're all resolved. They have all been resolved without the Emergency Measures Act.
Exactly.
It's all been resolved. So it's all being contained. I know that they've got, my son lives in Windsor, and there's blockades all along Huron Church. So no one can access Huron Church up until the EC Row Expressway. So in between there and the bridge, you cannot access Huron Church unless you're on Huron Church from the expressway and closer to the 401. So he doesn't need to invoke this. And I thought about it, and how there was a 10-day, well, it's now a 60-day, but it was a 10-day ban on honking in Ottawa.
Yes.
The judge said it's a legal the judge couldn't do anything other than state there's a 10-day ban on honking. So if it was illegal, why didn't the judge do something about it at that time? And now that has been extended to 60 days. So I'm just thinking, if this is an illegal protest, why is this judge allowing it to be happening? And the only thing he's doing is saying you can't honk. So I don't get that. I don't understand the disconnect there. So
yeah, see, that judge actually referred to the protest as being a lawful protest.
Right.
It is lawful.
It's a really good point too, that all of these politicians that are sitting in the House of Commons, like, the word illegal is probably used like 100,000 times today. And I think they're probably still debating and talking about this.
Probably.
However, most of these people aren't qualified to determine what is legal and what is not legal.
Right.
And so they're making these defamatory statements and all this other gobbledygook.
Yes.
And they're not even in a place of authority to do so.
That's right. To me, it's all theater. It really is. I mean, there's a lot of people that have never watched anything Parliament ever. So now people are tuning in to watching Parliament sessions, and they're like, "That's what happens?" And I said, "Yeah, it's theater. It's literally theater. You have the question and answer period. Nobody answers a question.
No.
They issue. It's all theater. That's what I say. So I don't even understand why we have it, because it just doesn't seem like it works.
Well,
I mean, I understand why we have elected. I'm just speaking.
Yeah, I know. I hear what you mean. Well, I mean, it has worked since 1867.
Yes, I know, and it does work, and that's why I have faith that this Emergency Measures Act is not, at the end of the day, it's gonna fall. I don't know.
I don't think it will, because it's going to be just like we had seen with the vote to implement a plan to get rid of basically pandemic mandates, and the NDP and the Liberal Party said no, we're not doing that, and the Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois said, yeah, we really need to do this, but here's the thing, right? The Liberal and the NDP outnumber everybody.
Right. I get that. So yes, I agree with you.
When they vote on Monday, they're going to vote and say, yeah, we need the emergency measures. And like Rick is saying, it's supposed to go to the Senate.
Yes.
And
yes, it will go to the Senate. That's where I'm thinking. So I agree with you. It will pass because the NDP and the Liberals will pass it through, and they outnumber the Bloc and the Conservatives. Although the Bloc, what's his name? I don't know, the block leader,
Yeah, I don't know his name.
he was imploring the NDP to reconsider. He did it a few times to
Yes.
come over to the other side. So I don't know. And I don't know if any of these people will cross party lines. I mean, a few liberals have.
They didn't vote that way, though. Eh?
No, I know they didn't. But I mean, with all of this happening and people reaching out to them, I know a lot of people are going to be reaching out to these Liberal and NDP MPs. I mean, I can't imagine that some of these people do not have empathy for what is going on right now. Like, are they all that hard, cold people that think, yep, we're going to put it through because we know how? I don't know. I honestly don't believe the people that are affected by this only live in conservative and block ridings. So there are a lot of people that don't want this, that are living in Liberal and NDP ridings, and they're going to reach out to their MPs. And I guess it's going to be on that MP to decide whether they're going to listen to their constituents or they're going to do what they have to do in order to further their own selfish, agenda.
And well, there's just a lot of people who don't bloody care. They don't pay attention to anything.
I know, it's so sad.
They'll gladly download every government app that Justin Trudeau tells them to. They just want to be left alone at home with their toaster and their steel-belted radio.
I know.
So this is the news conference with the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. They are suing the federal government. Let's roll this clip.
Excuse me a moment, please.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This week, the federal government invoked the Emergencies Act, an extreme law that has never been used, and it announced 2 emergency orders that will have sweeping consequences on individuals, orders that it passed outside of ordinary democratic processes. The Civil Liberties Association has spoken out loudly against this decision, and today we have our own announcement. We are taking the Government of Canada to court. We are here today because of the government's response to the protests and blockades. The government's emergency declaration is unprecedented and seriously infringes the charter rights of Canadians. The government has brought in an extreme measure that should be reserved for national emergencies, a legal standard that has not been met. Emergency powers cannot and must not be normalized. For all the peaceful and disruptive protests in Canada's history, some involving unlawful acts and protracted standoffs with police, never before has a government declared a national emergency under the Emergencies Act, and with that, given itself the enormous powers to bypass the ordinary, accountable democratic process. Our commitment to equality and other rights is the reason that we strongly support the charter right to peaceful assembly. This is how marginalized people can stand up for their rights. Protest is how people in a democracy express and share their political messages of all kinds, whether they be environmental activists, students taking to the streets, Indigenous land defenders, workers on strike, people who know that Black Lives Matter, and others who oppose government measures of all kinds. Our society needs peaceful assembly, a critical democratic tool. And even though not every person may agree with the content of every movement, many protests are disruptive. It is possible for a gathering to be both disruptive and peaceful and nonviolent. Disruptive protest, while often unlawful, like shutting down pipelines or camping out in a public space, can be the most effective way of raising awareness. And at protests, many different kinds of people might end up in the same space, joined by a common cause. The fact that some of the protesters may break laws, act aggressively or oppressively, does not necessarily mean that other protesters share their extremist views or conduct. Let me be clear. We are deeply concerned by the reports that some of the protesters currently in the streets have engaged in violent, racist, and homophobic acts. We hear and recognize the impacts these acts are having on marginalized communities. We stand with these communities. We condemn this behavior. We also recognize that the recent protests are having a considerable and difficult impact on the lives of those who live and work in their vicinity. We recognize that people in Ottawa have been profoundly and negatively affected. But again, we are here today because of the government's response to these protests and blockades. The right to protest and peaceful assembly is not a free-for-all. Reasonable limits can and sometimes must be imposed. We have no issue with this. But when imposing reasonable limits, police can and must exercise restraint, as must government. Police must avoid escalation. We have fought many times against police shutting down protests using excessive force, detentions and arrests, in particular against Indigenous, racialized, and other marginalized protesters. I'd like to now turn it over to my colleague, Abby Deschman, who is the director of the Criminal Justice Program.
The Canadian Civil Liberties Association has retained counsel to launch a judicial review challenging the government's invocation of the Federal Emergencies Act. The Act gives the executive branch of the government extraordinary powers, and the legal threshold to use these extraordinary powers is intentionally high. Ensuring this threshold is met is a critical protection for the democratic process, the rule of law, and the civil liberties of individuals that may be impacted by these emergency orders. In our view, the threshold set out in the Emergencies Act, the legal requirements put in place to safeguard our democratic processes have not been met. Section 3 of the Emergencies Act requires that there be a national emergency, a temporary, urgent, and critical situation that seriously endangers the lives, health, or safety of Canadians and is of such proportions or nature that it exceeds the capacity or authority of a province to deal with it. It also encompasses serious situations that seriously threaten the ability of the Government of Canada to preserve the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of the country. In either case, the emergency must be such that it cannot be effectively dealt with under any other Canadian law. We do not want to minimize the impacts that the protests are having on people across the country. But while some of the blockades have been immensely disruptive, it is unclear that the ongoing protests endanger the lives, health, or safety of Canadians so seriously that they constitute a national emergency. It is also far from clear that our existing laws and police powers are ineffective in confronting this challenge. Police deal with extremely complex, difficult law enforcement situations every day. Local police across this country have cleared several highly disruptive border blockades and are successfully managing numerous other protests in communities across the country, all without emergency powers. There are some localized situations that have proven much more difficult to police, but the emergency orders that the government has passed are not targeted. They are not limited to specific protests or specific geographic locations. They are expansive emergency orders that apply equally across the entire country, and they place unprecedented restrictions on every single Canadian's constitutional rights. In other words, they apply to everyone, you, me, everyone. These emergency orders currently in force place severe limits on peaceful protest. Police have now been given the authority across the country to shut down a wide range of peaceful protests if they're snarling traffic or blocking sidewalks. Protests that take place close to bus stations, hospitals, or COVID-19 vaccination sites are specifically restricted, even if they aren't disrupting traffic. The order also requires financial institutions to turn over the personal financial details to CSIS and the RCMP, and to freeze the bank accounts and cut off all financial services of people who have attended or have provided assistance to those participating in a prohibited assembly. Again, these orders are not limited to Ottawa. They don't apply only at the border. They are not specifically targeting trucker convoys. These orders limit the rights of every single Canadian, with a particular focus on people who participate in, travel to, or assist with the protest, no matter where it takes place, no matter the issue. There are thousands of protests in Canada every year. protests about climate change, Indigenous land claims, anti-Black racism, and yes, protests in support of and against public health measures. The vast majority of these protests are entirely peaceful. These orders potentially apply to them all. We believe that the federal government's invocation of these emergency powers is unlawful and unconstitutional. The Prime Minister has repeatedly said that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms continues to apply. We agree. And we believe that these measures are clearly unconstitutional. We will be asking the courts to step in to defend the rule of law and the constitutional rights of all people across the country.
Nice.
So that is that in a nutshell.
When was that?
Today.
Oh, was it today? Okay.
That's today.
Because he's trying to say that he's only going to apply it geographically. That's what he's trying to say. But when he was asked in Parliament, you know, for example, from, I always forget his name, the leader of the bloc. Anyway, he was asked, are you going to exclude Quebec? We can look after ourselves, but he wouldn't answer, you know. And there's a lot of the provinces that are not on board with this.
You mean Francois Legault?
Yes.
Right?
No.
The Premier.
No. Oh, the bloc? Oh,
yeah, the bloc. Yes.
Bloc leader. Yeah.
I forget his name. Anyway, and there are other, not all the provinces are on board with this. I think there's four or five that have clearly said, no, we don't want this.
That's Yves Francois Blanchet.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. So.
And you know, I think that leaves a lot of food for thought, because Quebec has been like the most tyrannical province.
I know.
When Quebec is saying we don't want any more tyranny, like, you know, there's something up here.
I know. And when people from Quebec side with the Conservatives, like when the Bloc sides with the Conservatives, I thought, okay, wow, this really means that they mean business too. So
you see, it just gives Trudeau so much power, and the real danger here is that this, in my opinion, this is a political targeting. This is him using legislation, using this, I'm calling it the War Measures Act because that's what it is,
yes,
to target his political enemies, political dissidents, truckers, protesters, people who disagree with him, people who have embarrassed him politically, because it has been the single most effective protest of its type, probably in history anywhere in the world. It's inspiring similar protests and convoys in other countries and across Canada.
Yeah, all over.
He hates it, and it makes him look foolish. He wants it ended, and he's gone so far as to improperly use this piece of legislation, which is what the Civil Liberties Association is saying. You can't normalize the use of this.
No.
It's dangerous. You can't let a politician use it as a political tool to target political opponents, because that is how you undermine democracy. Look at the chilling effect that this is having on people even donating to a political cause. You see it already in our society, because the left is so aggressive, and I'll even use the word violent, in the way that they oppose their political foes, that a lot of people will be reluctant to express their views, because if you even say anything, you get attacked, you get doxxed. Look at what they've done. They hacked into that list, and then they make it public, whoever donated the money, right? And whether it's encouraging people to boycott a particular company because they did something that they don't like, or donate to a political party. So who wants to get involved with, say, the Conservative Party, or the PPC, or the Ontario Party, or some other party that might have conservative leanings?
Or the New Blue Party.
Or the New Blue Party, right? And you might get called out, singled out, hammered. You'll be targeted, and they'll come after you, right? That's what this does, because it gives Trudeau the power to say, see, all it takes now, and this is the reality today, oh, you donated $20 to the truckers. Well, you know what? Those guys are white nationalist,
I know.
fascist terrorists.
Mhm.
And if you supported them with a donation, that makes you one too. So you're coming with me off to the slammer. And we're freezing your bank account, and we're going to take your car.
I know.
And that's where we're at tonight, because Justin Trudeau has declared war on his own people. And that means anybody that he deems to be a terrorist, if he can find any little reference, you know, I spoke to someone today who said, you know, I kind of like what them truckers are doing. And I said, if they even hear you say that, off with you, because you're supporting them. I mean, it can be that.
Yeah, it
that
could be.
serious.
But I'll support them till the end. So until they take me away and lock me up.
Off to the gulag with you too.
It's okay. I'm okay with it. What's the saying? I'd rather
die on my feet.
Than die on my feet than kneel on something on my I don't know. What is it, Brendan? Come on, help me out.
I'd rather die on my feet than on my knees, something or other.
Yeah, something like that. But I think it's a little bit more. But you know what I mean, anyway. So yeah,
I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees.
Yeah. So there is something important that they did mention there. They said, "Don't be fooled. This applies to every single Canadian."
Oh, Liz.
So, like, this is not going to be a geographic thing. This is nationwide. And the whole financial aspect of it, like, this is the most tyrannical thing our government has done in my lifetime. I don't know about you all's lifetime, but in my lifetime, this is the most tyrannical thing our government has ever done. And the very fact that they take it so lightly and they don't care is the most astonishing thing.
Most people aren't even clued into this. They don't get it. And that's sort of I knew when they changed the name from the War Measures Act to the Emergencies Act, even back then, I said, I don't know, that worries me, because
it doesn't seem as serious.
Because that is one of the things that they do to normalize its use.
Right.
Now it's not, you know, it's supposed to be reserved for a time of war.
Yeah.
Right? But they broadened it. They broadened it. So now they can use it for a lot of things.
The only time the War Measures Act was ever invoked was the First World War, the Second World War, and then under Pierre Trudeau, I think
it was during the FLQ crisis in 1970.
Yeah, some diplomats were murdered.
We talked about that the other night, and it happened between, it was the Front de Liberation de Quebec. They were a radical separatist movement, terrorist group, and to get where he got, there had been over 200 bombings between 1963 and 1970.
Right.
There had been, I don't know, I can't remember the exact number, how many people were killed. I think it was 6 killed, murdered. And then there were 2 prominent political figures that were killed. And that was what prompted him to implement the
it was
war,
warranted.
Bring it in.
It
wasn't even then.
You don't think it was?
Then, no, because then it was the use of it was controversial.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yes, because there was a lot of people felt, a lot of legal experts felt that it still didn't meet the threshold for the situation to put didn't represent an existential threat to the sovereignty or the existence of Canada as a nation state. It wasn't like a foreign invasion. So we had law enforcement agencies in place that could have dealt with it using the existing tools and methods.
Right.
But FLQ was such a small group too, so it's not like it was something that it was an international problem. They did
or even a national problem. Like, they didn't have the ability really to overthrow the government.
Right.
So some people's lives were at risk, some people's, but not all Canadians. So, it was controversial.
It was probably because it affected the diplomats, because there were some diplomats that were killed and kidnapped. So that's probably why. If they were everyday Canadians, it probably wouldn't have happened.
That's right. In
But
fact,
because
in the quote from one of the most famous interviews surrounding that time, I believe he said something like, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he said that, we have to protect important people.
right.
Important people. That was something that stuck in my head years ago when I remembered him talking about it. The important people. The rest of the Canadians, they could kill a bunch of them and we wouldn't care that
Yeah, it
much.
doesn't matter.
But the important people,
Yeah.
yeah, we have to do something now, right?
Yeah.
It was a complex question, but even then, and I think Robert Stanfield was the conservative leader at the time, and he voted in favor of it. But afterward, years later, was quoted as saying before he died that his biggest regret was voting in favor of supporting Trudeau to implement the War Measures Act at that
Right.
time.
Anyway,
So-
I guess my point was basically that it was, so that one is controversial, but I mean, World War I, World War II, I would have to say that those were legitimate times to invoke that. So basically what I'm saying is it's not really, I don't think, and I have to tend to think that most people don't think it's worthy of being invoked at this time.
No, not for bouncy castles and hot
No.
tubs, and
No.
and even and those border crossing issues, as you pointed out, were resolved before it was brought
right.
in. And even if those border blockades were still happening right now, I would argue that, and the Canadian Civil Liberties Association actually referred to this, even with those kinds of demonstrations, it still does not meet the threshold. And I pointed this out the other night because protests like that have happened in the past at the Ambassador Bridge in the 70s, in the 80s, in the early 90s, 91. I covered blockades there that were at that time unprecedented in scope. And even then, there was never any consideration given to bringing in the War Measures Act in response to it. It happened back then, and the local police service dealt with it. Okay. And even then, the police let that go on for some time before actually going in and taking aggressive measures to break it up, because they recognized at the time that the truckers actually have a right to protest, even in that manner, even if it does disrupt cross-border traffic, because it's really more akin to something like a strike. And the truckers, if you think about it, it's not much different than if they were working at a factory or an auto plant and they went on strike and they park themselves out front and prevent trucks from entering the plant or prevent scab labor from entering the plant.
Right.
These are things that we have set precedents for. Well, that bridge represents a workplace for those truckers.
Yeah.
So it's not a totally inappropriate place to hold a demonstration like that. And the Civil Liberties Association referred to things like, blockading pipelines. And it may be disruptive. It may even be costly, but sometimes citizens are left with no alternative if they want their voice to be heard. And sometimes those are the only ways to have their voices heard effectively.
Right.
So in a democratic free society, we have to put up with some of these disruptions and deal with them in an appropriate way. And allowing government to become this heavily involved and using something like the Emergency Services Act or the War Measures Act is entirely inappropriate, because it allows Justin Trudeau to use that as a political tool to smash and crush and pulverize people that he doesn't like.
Interestingly enough, Bloc Québécois brought up a point about there's a lot of constituents in their writings that mention trauma from the October crisis and the wrongful arrest of hundreds of individuals and that sort of thing. I thought that was an interesting point that they made, and just goes to show you that the depth of the harm that the government is going to be causing here is going to be for years to be seen. Like, it's going to be there for a long time. Also, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Louise Lanctot story, Lanctot, but she was a member of the FLQ and was involved in the kidnappings. and she got a free passage to Cuba, and the government even pardoned her like years later.
Really?
The world is a strange place, especially when it comes to politics.
Like who pardoned her? Was it Trudeau? Like senior?
No,
Oh,
I'm not sure who pardoned her.
But if you use this act as well to bestow special or more powers upon police services, do you think they're not going to use those powers? Canadians are very confused about their rights, have always been confused about their rights. They think that we have the same kinds of rights that U.S. citizens do. I speak to people all the time, and they use phrases like "we the people." That's an American thing. They think that we have, the media, the press has certain rights and freedoms, which we don't. Not anywhere like they do in the U.S. Okay,
No, I know.
well, we already don't have those levels of rights, and now with this, we have no rights.
I know.
None.
Washing on them.
None.
Well, even I think sidewalks are included. Like I couldn't go and protest on a sidewalk right now if I wanted to.
That's right. I mean, you go and you're taking a risk because then the cops can come down there and they'll just whatever.
But
right.
As far as police, I don't think this changes what they can and cannot do with the Emergency Measures Act. I don't think it gives them any more powers because they don't take direction really from the provincial or the federal government. They're kind of a self-governing body, I guess. I don't know, for lack of better words.
The police?
Yeah, like I don't know that this will change. I don't think it's going to change what they have the ability to do and not to do, except for the Emergency Act is going to allow them to do more things, but I don't think I don't know. I'm not expressing.
The Emergency Act does give them more powers, and the powers that are being bestowed upon them are ones that Justin Trudeau has created. And if they're not doing enough, he'll create new ones and more because he has the power to do it. He's basically through by giving them more powers that he feels that they need, he's actually in an indirect way, even through that, directing their actions. He's saying, now you can go spy on these guys. You can just listen to their phone conversations. You can do this. You can do that. These guys don't have any right to free speech. That guy over there, he's a terrorist, by the way. So you should go arrest him. It gives them broad powers, and they will use them. Make no mistake. I just want to address this from Miss Jensk one. So she says, Rick Walker, Rick, everything you said about Trudeau is true. I don't know why you said last night that you want him to be PM. I'll just clarify that. What I meant by that was Justin Trudeau is already the prime minister. And I think in my conversation with Carla, I said, we should pray for Justin Trudeau. And she said, always pray for your enemy. And I said, I don't want Justin Trudeau to be my enemy. I want him to be my prime minister because he's already my prime minister. I want him to act like the prime minister and do the right things for the Canadian people because that's his job. That's what I mean. It's not like I mean I support him or I would vote for him, but because he's the prime minister, I want him to act prime ministerial. I don't want him to act. I want him to act in the best interests of the country. I want him to stop dividing people. That's what I mean. He's there anyway. He was elected. We're stuck with him, whether we like him or not. So I just want him to do good things, not bad things. That's all I meant by that. So yeah, I'm petrified by what's going on with this whole thing surrounding the Emergencies Act, the War Measures Act. If people don't understand that we're going to get crushed by this, it's like it's everybody. Your entire way of life has changed already. You think that you're suffering because of COVID, passports and all this other stuff. You ain't seen nothing yet. Nothing. They're coming after cryptocurrency. They're going to regulate it, possibly ban it. They were talking about that today.
Yes,
Possibly
Christian.
banning cryptocurrency, no Bitcoin for Canada. Think about that. What else are they can they do? I mean, it just it doesn't end. With this level of power, it does not end. They're going to go after the internet. They're
Yep.
going to censor everything. You think you can come on here shortly? You think you're going to be able to come on here and talk about how you like the truckers? Or do you think you're going to be able to come on here and say that you like the conservative government or anything else? Think again, folks. The government will have total control over every aspect of your life. And more than that, through fear, they will control everyone. This is beyond a social credit system. This is do as you're told or else. Stay in line or else. And as we've seen,
we have Carla.
yes, and as we've seen, the RCMP in the past has gone and fabricated evidence and trapped people. You think they wouldn't do that again? I don't know. I hope not. But man, you give people, power corrupts, right? Power corrupts. It's dangerous. How are you tonight, Carla? Bring us back to a positive place, a happy place. I'm talking way too much and everyone's depressed.
Well, I am going to bring you something positive. First of all, the positive thing is I'm back in my hotel room. I was on the ground from 7 o'clock until almost 7 o'clock tonight. So as you would know, I was a drowned rat, tired, cold, wet. I did have a shower. I was too lazy to blow dry my hair. That's why I'm wearing Big Law's hat. So human rights are non-negotiable. So today, I mean, I have some positive, and of course I do have some negative. The positive thing is that the protesters still have that cheerful, unified, joyful energy, and they're still peacefully protesting amid, no matter what's happening. One of the organizers, Chris Barber, was arrested tonight on mischief down on one of the side streets. So I think there were maybe 1 or 2 people who were kind of close to him that were able to catch a live. I did not catch it. It wasn't out in the
ran
open.
some video of that. Yeah.
Yeah, we did run the video.
Yeah, like they're doing it a little sneaky. They obviously are, because they don't want the crowd. You did see where I came along to the front and saw them surrounding the police officer around that car. I originally thought that they were towing the car, but I found out later they actually arrested the guy that owns the car. And I assumed that because I didn't see him. So they are making arrests, but just kind of one at a time. It's not this massive thing that we're expecting. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it is happening. There was no sonic boom. That was a positive.
Yeah, that's positive.
Yeah, and the Jericho March, I don't know if you guys caught the footage on that. That was probably the most beautiful thing I've ever had the privilege to witness.
Cue that one up. I think that's a good one to share.
So you're queuing it up, just to catch everybody up. So they did a Jericho March, they called it. So it was symbolic of the story of the Battle of Jericho, which is found in the Bible in Joshua. And the idea was that they marched around, there was a wall, and they marched around this Jericho for 7 days. So for 6 days, they marched one time. On the 7th day, they marched 7 times. And on their 7th round, they blew their horns, they blew their trumpets, they praised God, and this wall was massive. So this was kind of one of the first miracles in the Bible. And so this wall came crumbling down. So symbolically, the protesters have decided that they were going to do that so that they could have a breakthrough. So they could have a breakthrough with the government, so they could have a breakthrough on the mandates, so they could have a breakthrough on the division, and so they did it today, and it was significant. It took them an hour every time they marched. So it was really something. And today was the 7th day. They marched 7 times. And when they arrived, the horns went. So they were blowing shofar and horns themselves, but then the truckers, they honked their horns for 7 straight minutes, and the crowd was incredible. And there was this presence that's indescribable. I mean, I was weeping. I could barely stand.
There's so much footage from today, and I did actually earlier today. I tapped into your live feed, and I was live, and we did actually show that.
Yeah, so
not all of it, but I did show some of that march.
I do need to get better at labeling. I don't label them unless I have to say I don't own the rights to music, because I do get blocked with music. It's just I'm just doing them so often, and honestly I'm tired at the end of the night, so I don't label them.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's okay. But the mood's still positive in the face of all these, threats of coercion and arrest.
I spoke to many people. They say that they are not afraid, and if they are arrested, they're willing to accept it freely and will do it by cooperation. I mean, even today, I was concerned when I did come around where the police were surrounding that car. There were a few people kind of getting close to the police, and there were a lot of police there. But it was remarkable because all it takes is one protester to start singing "O Canada." And that seems to be the theme. Anytime things seem to get tense or it looks like something, people could kind of lose their cool, they're really easily grounded by singing "O Canada." And it's just incredible.
Yeah. That reminds me of the scene in the Humphrey Bogart movie where, oh man, it's the most famous movie ever made. It's on
Casablanca?
Casablanca, thank you.
That was before my time.
Where they're in the cabaret or the bar, and they all sing the French national anthem. Yeah.
Play it again, Sam.
That's it.
Yeah, but yeah, the mood is exactly the same. And what was interesting is I did get up there quite early because there was talk that the police were, assembling and they were coming, and we sort of waited all day for this massive, rush of the police, which didn't happen. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. It just didn't happen. One thing I did notice, and I did mention in my lives, and I don't know if you've discussed it already, but if you look behind at the Parliament building, they've been busy all day putting up this extra fencing that goes above the already fencing. That's like temporary fencing, and it's assumed that it's to keep the protesters out of there. They've only got 1 or 2 areas where you can actually go in and get close to the Parliament building, like where the Eternal Flame used to be, the Eternal Flame is. And, but I think that the goal is to get everybody out of there, and they're going to close it off. Like they feel like the protesters may, kind of run to the Parliament. I'm not sure. Regardless, that's what they've done.
They've tried to spin this narrative and create this idea that this is a Canadian version of January 6th, right? You got a bunch of crazy redneck, toothless hicks playing banjos, and they're all going to storm the Parliament buildings just like they did in January 6th in Washington. So and I'm sorry, but putting up all that fencing, that's optics. That's marketing.
Exactly.
That's politics. That's sending a message, a visual message. Right. And it's like fear. Look at these dangerous people. We have to defend the Parliament buildings from them. Yeah. It's a visual thing for the cameras. That's what that is.
And it's the exact same thing they did when they closed off the Highway 402 in Sarnia-Lambton, where they were working basically in support of the trucking movement. The Sarnia-Lambton Health Unit shut down their office and relocated for the reason of safety. And on this very show, we looked up the distance between where they had the road closure and the health office, and it was like 50 kilometers or something of that nature. It's all optics, and it's all to be like, oh, we're so scared. It's like, give me a break.
Well, it's with regard to the fencing, I mean, it is exactly like what we saw in Washington.
Yeah.
They put fences up all around the Capitol. And a lot of that, honestly, folks, is for show. And it was to justify bringing in the military, the National Guard, right? Guys with guns, to amplify this image in people's minds that there was this huge threat that they had to bring in, a military presence to counteract this massive threat. In my view, that was a lot of political theater as well, and it continues today. And that's what we're getting in Ottawa. And that's why I think even after this thing is gone, you're going to see that fencing stay in place for quite a while.
Oh, yeah.
Probably indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you're going to see, if he gets to use this War Measures Act, the Emergencies Act, it's not going away soon, because once these guys are gone, he'll just say, well, yeah, the trucker thing is gone in Ottawa, but there is still a lot of racist truckers out there and a lot of racist farmers too. And we're going to have to do something to make sure nothing bad happens. And we have intelligence going on, and we're just going to have to leave this in place because, you know, we'll leave the fencing up, and we're going to have to do it to protect Canadians.
That's right.
It's going to be the same symbology that they use to keep everybody down with the keeping the flag at half mast for like 5 months and all this other stuff. It's just going to be symbology to make people feel bad and to keep people on edge.
Scared.
I'd like to know when they're going to light the flame again. Then fine, barricade it off, close it down, shut it down, but light that flame.
Yeah. The no longer eternal flame.
Ah,
I know.
The sometimes eternal flame.
Sometimes eternal.
Yeah.
Now,
Carla?
Yes.
Is there any talk about what the next step is if they?
Oh, that's just what I did on my. I just talked to my people that were watching.
Is there any talk about what the next step is if they do shut it all down and arrest everybody? And
no, I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
They simply aren't talking to the organizers, right? So they probably won't know what the next step is from the government.
I mean from the truckers' perspective.
From the truckers, you know what? Their concept is that they aren't shutting it down until they get what they want. They are holding the line. That is their phrase. They are holding the line, and the idea that they're trying to get is, you know, as the people are arrested, then they want more. They're constantly asking for more people to come. In hopes that as people get arrested, there'll be someone standing in, you know, behind them. Sort of, you know, it's like they're the first line, and then they want the second, third, and fourth line.
Right. Yeah.
They're not backing down.
So, just before we get into this next thing, Carla is down there. She's incurring expenses. If people would like to donate to us and help us in this information war that we are part of, you can go to freedomreporters.com to donate. We'd greatly appreciate any support that you can provide to those who have already donated. Thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. It does help us a great deal. And we also have links posted in the YouTube and Facebook descriptions, so you can click on those and go to the donation page that way as well. But freedomreporters.com is the domain that you can type in. It'll take you straight there, and anything you can do would be greatly appreciated. We are here really trying to fight to get truth out there. Carla's on the ground getting raw footage, doing interviews. She's been out there getting rained on all day and
snowed on.
And snowed on, as you saw in the footage right off the top of the program. It's been cold, and she's been weathering all of it, and she's been awesome. And our purpose here is simply to try and provide some balance to the legacy media, which I worked for 25 years at CTV. And so I'm out of semi-retirement to do this, because Brendan and I talked, and we talked to the, you know, other people involved, and we just knew we had to do something when this whole thing started to roll out. And we'll be doing it for you know, even beyond this now, because we can see that this this information war is going to continue even after this convoy is down. Again, freedomreporters.com. If you can do anything to help, please, it greatly appreciated. Now, this
little nugget here that you have?
This is a news conference with some of the truckers from one of the groups, and maybe we can just roll a little bit of this to see what they have to say, since we were talking about, you know, what their position is on where things are at.
Hey, everybody. I'm Raven from Newfoundland, and I'm here in a humanitarian capacity, so I am about to release a message to local police office and enforcement here in Ottawa. Right now, you have it within you, in your own discretion, to change the future of the entire world. Every one of you as individuals and individual capacity as a human being cannot deny how proud you are of these people that stand here in Parliament, because these are your people. You are so much more than the uniforms you wear. You are fathers, sons, mothers, daughters, brothers, and sisters to us all. Are you going to be able to live with yourself if you choose to follow the dictates of a corrupt and criminal, unlawful government who has displayed no respect for law, humanity, or life itself? Or are you going to be the heroes that we believe you really are? Are you going to take a chance on us and allow us, your people, the opportunity to serve and protect the freedoms of your family and your children's families? It is the love of our great nation that has brought us here, and together we stand in the face of unbelievable adversary. With great courage and standing strong, we will peacefully, in unity, through courage, love, overcome these challenges presented by a tyrannical government that has created consistent divide. I am one Canadian amongst an entire world that can evolve into unified together as one, restoring democracy, freedom, and the rule of law. Please, for the love of God, for the love of each other, and for the love of our children, stand with us. This is our message to the law enforcement that's present here in Ottawa. We are appealing to you now because every day there are new challenges that we face, and every day our movement grows and we unify. So we are officially asking the law enforcement and every police presence in Ottawa to stand with the people, because we are here standing for you. Thank you for your time.
Amen.
Beautifully said. Perfect.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randy Hillier. I'm the independent member of the provincial legislature representing the riding of Lanark, Frontenac, and Kingston. And thank you for joining us today on this very somber and overcast day in our nation's capital. I'm just going to, this press conference, we're going to have a number of people which I'll introduce. I would ask everybody that hold your questions until all the presentations are complete. Each of the four individuals who will be speaking today will have some brief comments, about 5 minutes in length, and then followed by a robust and healthy and important exchange of questions and answers. Joining with me today is Bruce Party. He has been a lawyer and law professor for 30 years and serves as executive director of Rights Pro, a Toronto-based think tank. We also have David Amber, is a criminal lawyer and member of the bar of Quebec and Ontario with over 12 years of experience, and has, I would say, been prolific in defending freedom and people who have faced charges under the in the last 2 years. And he is also joined today with his colleague and associate, Matthew Olson. We also have Cecil Lyon. He has practiced law here in the city of Ottawa for over 35 years. He is known for the practice of dispute resolution. And last but not least, we have Sandy, a trucker from Alberta, who has been here since day one, who has traveled many thousands of miles to come to the nation's capital, along with his family and his children. And he, in my view, personifies the freedom movement, the Truckers' Convoy, and so many others like Sandy who are here. So just a brief more comment before we get underway. The Emergency Act that is being invoked in my view, demonstrates the gravity and just how dark the situation has become for our country. Never before in Canada's history have we authorized the use of force and violence to resolve a public policy dispute. Never. And that's what this Freedom Convoy is about, is a dispute and a difference on public policy on COVID mandates. We have invoked the authorities of the Emergency Act on only 3 occasions in our history: during the First World War, the Second World War, and during the FLQ crisis. In each of those cases, it was not just a threat, it was indeed committed acts of violence and an external or internal threat to our country. It wasn't a threat, it was actually actions that were being undertaken. But it was not about a dispute of public policy between the citizens of Canada and our government. The truckers' convoy, as I've described in the past, not only has delivered hope across the country to Ottawa, delivered hope to our country, it has delivered hope to the world. Justin Trudeau's invoking of the War Measures Act, or the Emergency Act, is an attempt to extinguish this glimmer of hope in this long, dark tunnel of the last 2 years. And I will say this. 2 years ago, our governments took the most heavy-handed, the most extreme approach to deal with an uncertain time. Without cause or care of the consequences of those extreme measures, we instituted lockdowns against an entire society over a respiratory virus. We knew there was going to be harm and consequences from those actions, but our governments did them anyway. And we all know significant increase in mortality by people who were never at risk of COVID. That's what we did 2 years ago. We swung the very blunt hammer at a small fly. We missed the fly and we caused substantial collateral damage. Justin Trudeau is attempting to swing a very blunt sledgehammer again at a fly of protest on Wellington Street. He will miss that fly once again. The consequences and the collateral damage of his actions will be felt by all Canadians for a long, long time. And I'll end off with this. I'll ask all Canadians, whether they be in Parliament or whether they be on the streets of Ottawa, all Canadians, whether they view themselves as bystanders and spectators to this defining moment in Canadian history, or Canadians who are being asked to implement the enforcement and authorities of the Emergency Act. Do we as Canadians resolve our differences through force and use of force and violence, or do we resolve our differences through peaceful, civil means? That is the question that is put before Canadians today. Our history has been one of peaceful civil discourse and to resolve differences in considered, thoughtful manners. Our Prime Minister is asking us to discard our history, and to embrace forceful, violent means to resolve our differences. With that, I would like to ask Professor Bruce Pardy to come to the podium.
Let's just pause this here and just get some thoughts on what Randy Hillier had to say. Don't everybody speak at once. Carla, you're laughing, so you get to go first.
I was laughing at you. I mean, obviously, Randy Hillier spoke the truth. I mean, why? There has been no violence. There's nothing about this protest that says invoke the Emergencies Act. It's he's so out of pocket and so overreaching on this. You know, I think it's just a big injustice. I agree with Randy Hillier 100%, every word he said. How about you, Brendan?
One thing I love about Randy Hillier is his consistency straight across the board since 2020. His consistent messaging regarding what the government has done over the past 2 years has been overreach. He always uses examples. He has an amazing point, which we have carried throughout the show here today, that the government keeps talking about all of these bad things that are going on, but they have a problem providing a specific example for anything, and the examples they do have, everything is already cleared up and over. So, way to go for consistency and a voice of reason. It's pretty amazing. Rhonda, off to you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything he said. I don't know. I'm right behind Randy, so yeah. I could say what you guys just said, but I won't bore everybody, so.
What about the lady before who and the appeal to police officers? Do you think that will make any difference as they prepare to do what they're about to do?
No.
I do.
No.
I do think there are, and only because I have some in my family, but I do think that there are police officers out there that are really going to struggle with doing something that they, in their heart, they know is wrong. So, and I know there's been lots of calls out from police officers to other police officers to really make sure that you really know what you're doing and what side of history you want to be on before you go and do something. So, yeah.
I feel like.
Go ahead.
You first.
Okay. I mean, for example, I know Chatham-Kent Police was called to go to Windsor to help out down there. And, you know, it was an option for them to do it. So some of them chose not to go, right? So I don't know.
That's my point.
Personally, I would not want to be a police officer right now.
No. That's my point. Everybody who's in Ottawa for everything that's going on, they want to be there. They signed up for it. They want they got the overtime pay and all the other things that go along with it. And I mean, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Some police officers absolutely love the opportunity to crack down skulls.
Yeah.
She definitely spoke directly to their hearts.
Yeah.
She was pulling on their heartstrings. I hung on every word she said, and I stand behind every single word she said. That's the kind of thing we're seeing on the ground. That is the message that most of the demonstrators and protesters are trying to give the police while they're there. But, you know, I kind of take back my first reaction to your question, Rick, because then I was reminded of the gentleman that I just spoke to before I came on, who said that, you know, they had the freeways all blocked. And then there were two who were kind of two OPP officers who were kind of laissez-faire that were just like, go on in. So you have to wonder if maybe there are a few, I don't want to use the word good eggs, but there are a few who maybe are having moral conflict within the group. Maybe they thought that it was okay because Brendan is right. They did sign up for this. They are all working on overtime because they're being pulled from, you know, their normal areas. I mean, short of the Ottawa police who would be sent there. So perhaps some of them are beginning to have a change of heart. And I think the more peaceful these demonstrators are, the more opportunities that people take to really dive to their moral compass, pull at their heartstrings, we could see some things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of sit on the fence, I guess, now.
Well, I think Brendan's right about the officers who are from other services, police services, who are there. Those
Right.
guys, for the most part, they
Signed
were
up.
given the option. They went, "Yeah, I'll take the overtime. I don't mind doing that. I'm in.
Right.
I'll go."
Yeah,
Right.
I know.
So those guys, yeah. And then, but we have seen some indication that yes, some officers are questioning what's going on, and that's because they did come out with a statement saying any officer that supports the truckers in any way will be severely dealt with.
Mm.
Remember those statements? So.
Yes. Yeah. And I've also seen that with other organizations where it's like, oh, if we find that any of our employees have anything supporting the truckers on their Facebook, they will be severely dealt with as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Usually from like healthcare agencies, right? It's happening. It's happening.
I was going to say, some of my healthcare colleagues have mentioned to me that that's a big no-go.
Oh,
That's a big no-no.
Can you share?
I can't really, but I will. How about I share it like this? It's always been a policy at the healthcare organization that I worked at that we knew that they were going to closely follow our Facebook. That was something that they did. And anytime you stepped outside of, if you spoke against the hospital or spoke against anything that could be related to speaking against the hospital, you certainly were called out on it. So I'll just say that this would be no different. Because
let's listen to what this next speaker had to say, this professor.
So when it comes to the Emergencies Act, the emperor has no clothes, is the message I would like to deliver to you. You may have seen or read legal commentators say that the invocation of the Emergencies Act has not been proper, is not valid, the requirements have not been met, and they are correct. And I want just briefly to explain why that is. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but I think it's important that we all understand what they're saying and why. So I want to start with the Emergencies Act itself. It is, as you probably know, a federal statute, an ordinary federal statute that already existed, has existed since 1988. It provides the framework for a government to invoke as long as the requirements in the statute are met. And if those requirements are not met, then nothing else works, nothing else is valid. In other words, the government cannot act in this way unless it has statutory authority, right? So that's the first point. Second point is this. The Emergencies Act provides for 4 different kinds of emergencies: public welfare, public order, international, and war. Now, on this occasion, if you look at the proclamation, the declaration that the government has brought forward, they have chosen a public order emergency. So the other 3 are now out. We're talking about a public order emergency as defined in the Act. So let's look at the definition. And the words, as is always the case when you're dealing with law, the words matter. The words matter. They define the line between lawful and unlawful. So here's the definition of a public order emergency. It means an emergency that arises from threats to the security of Canada that is so serious as to be a national emergency. Okay. Now, as is so often the case in statutes, you have definitions that have terms that are themselves defined. So one of the requirements of meeting this threshold for a public order emergency is to have a national emergency. what does national emergency mean in the statute? It means this. It means an urgent and critical situation of a temporary nature that is either A or B. And here's A, and I'll tell you B. A is this. A, it seriously endangers the lives, health, or safety of Canadians and is of such proportions as to exceed the capacity or authority of a province to deal with. That's A. B is seriously threatens the ability of the government to preserve the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity. Now, those are the two choices. It's got to be A or B. And in this case, I'll get to it in a minute, the government has chosen A. So forget B. And the final bit of that definition is, and that cannot be effectively dealt with under any other law of Canada. Okay, so we're racking up requirements here. What do we have so far? Number one, in order to be validly invoked, there has to be a public order emergency that, number one, threatens the security of Canada. Number two, seriously endangers the lives, health, and safety of Canadians. Number three, exceeds the capacity or authority of a province to deal with. And number four, is not able to be effectively dealt with under any existing laws. If you do not meet all those four things, you have not met the threshold of a public order emergency. Now, that's the statute. That's the statute that has existed since 1988. Now we get into what the Trudeau government has actually done. The first thing they did is proclaim, invoke, declare that they were using the act. And in that proclamation, they have identified, as they are required to do, the emergency they are acting on. How do they describe it? Well, in several parts, but here's the key one. The emergency is activities that are directed toward or in support of threat or use of acts of serious violence. The emergency is serious violence. That's what the government has said. For the purpose of achieving a political or ideological objective. That's the basis for the regulations that they have now made. One providing for emergency measures on the ground, and one providing for economic measures, like freezing of bank. So the question is this, is that a valid invocation of the act? Well, just this morning, in response to a reporter, the Minister of Public Safety was asked what the basis was, whether or not they had intelligence about the violence or the weapons. Because after all, keep this in mind, there has not been any violence in Ottawa from the Convoy. There has been no violence. And so there must be some kind of evidence that indicates that there's going to be violence, there's going to be a threat of violence, because here again is the words. The words are in the proclamation, the threat or use of acts of serious violence. In response to the question from the reporter, the minister said that there was no intelligence of the existence or presence of weapons in downtown Ottawa. And in fact, what he said instead was that the basis for the government's actions was rhetoric. Rhetoric. It was speech. It was the expression of an ideological position. Now, just for a moment, consider the implications. This is a government that has invoked an emergency statute on its own admission on the basis of something that somebody has said. They have no actual violence occurring. They have no intelligence about threats of violence occurring. I'm sure you can work out what the consequences are if this is to be considered a proper use of the Emergencies Act. Now, let's just take a bigger picture just for a moment. I don't want to get too far into this, and I don't want to take up too much time. But just for a moment, consider this. The ideology that is now in place in our political realm is one in which language is being redefined. There's all kinds of terms that don't mean what they used to mean. Racism, for example. But included in that list are some very important terms that are very relevant here, like freedom. Freedom now means, apparently, safety. The rule of law means governments taking control of things for, quote, proper outcomes. And one of those words that have been redefined is violence. Violence can now mean words. Honking has been called violence. And they now are taking that literally. They have said they're proceeding against violence, and what do they have? They have words. They have rhetoric. They have an expression of a political position. And it is that rhetoric, it is that political position that they are afraid of. And that constitutes the emergency. And in a way, you know, it does. It does constitute an emergency for them. Not within the meaning of the Emergencies Act. That does not meet that threshold. But in political terms, you can kind of see how this might be seen by them as an emergency. So I'll leave you with this thought. If this invocation of the Emergencies Act is valid, then governments have the power to declare emergencies and crush any peaceful protest, any dissent that threatens their political fortunes and ideology. And that's not the kind of country we want to live in.
Thank you, Bruce.
Amen.
It's the bouncy castles. I knew it.
Well, as we already know, everybody, liberals are terrified of words. Rhetoric cannot have that. It is dangerous. It is insurrection. It is deadly.
I'm about to blow this hat off of my head. Seriously, Justin Trudeau, in my opinion, is acting like a child. They called me names. They told me to go F myself, you know. They said they don't want me to be their president or their prime minister anymore. They want me to step down. These are their violent words. They don't have any trust in me. They think that I'm a dictator. So his response to that is to invoke the Emergency Act because they weren't saying nice words in the sandbox. Come on. On the bouncy castle.
Elegantly put. I really like how you put that. They're not playing
I'm
nice
sorry.
in the sandbox.
I'm just struggling. Like you can see my face is red. It's actually red. And it's not just the cold.
I don't know how anybody could listen to him. Any person could listen to him. Any person with a heartbeat could listen to what that man said and think, yep, he has to invoke that. I don't know how anybody. I don't know. Just crazy.
I'm inspired by that comment, Rhonda. I'm going to look up and see, is there a Justin Trudeau fan club?
I think, sadly, there is.
And they all wear red.
I think there is just
also the same color as communism.
Yes.
I think you can buy his used socks on there in the merch area.
Oh, I need to get footage of these socks. So there are socks hung along the fence line for Justin.
But do you see how dangerous this is? Because if it passes and it sticks and he keeps that power, that's what I've been
Doomed.
saying. Now
We're
he can
doomed.
use that to target any political opponent
Yeah.
and crush them. If you decide to run against him, right? The professor is quite right. It's not really a national emergency, but it's sure a big emergency for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals and their political fortunes. This is about politics. It's not it's a political emergency for the government, a political emergency, because they're losing the support of the people and they can see it. So rather than go out and talk to the people, they've decided to use the War Measures Act and go to war against them and declare war so that they can just turn the cops against them and crush them and shut them up, which then begs the question, how much further are they prepared to go? Will they take steps then to circumvent the next national election, federal election, to maintain control if they feel they don't have enough public support? Well, then that's a pretty serious emergency for the Liberals and the sitting prime minister, isn't it? It's certainly an existential threat to them as a political force. And if you're using the War Measures Act as a political tool, as a sledgehammer, as Randy Hillier said, to crush your enemies, that's what they do that's what dictators do. That's what they do in communist countries. And that's where our country is headed. If something isn't done to stop this, and it has to be stopped now, because if he gets that power in a way that is approved by Parliament and the Senate, it may be impossible to ever take it back from him. Make no mistake, this gives Justin Trudeau dictatorial powers. And as we heard from the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, it is not, he says that it's going to be geographically targeted, but that's only because he is saying he's choosing to do that. But the truth is, the invocation of the act gives him much broader powers that really apply to every Canadian in every part of the country and every aspect of our lives. How far he chooses to take that power is really at that point up to him. That's why this is so dangerous. We cannot allow Justin Trudeau or any political leader ever to use this act for this kind of purpose. As the Civil Liberties Association said, we can't allow its use to be normalized.
Agreed. Does anybody here know the balance of power in the Senate, like a Liberal versus Conservative? Does anybody know?
I believe it's still a Conservative. It leans slightly Conservative.
Okay.
So,
Hold on.
Brandon's gonna look it up.
Yeah, I think it comes down to us really at the end of it all. It's going to be the Senate that's going to.
Yes, because it will pass through the House, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. When you've got the Liberals and the NDP, they're 2 in 1.
And you see, Jagmeet Singh wants it in place because he wants to use it to target his political enemies too. He's of the same kind of mindset, only even in a more extreme way.
Yes.
It's very, very dangerous, folks. Canadians really need to be taking note of this. And the CBC, I was watching some coverage and some analysis there, and they're bringing out talking heads, and they're soft pedaling this to the public as though it's nothing to worry about. It's overdue. He should have done this a long time ago. These truckers, they're out of control. They're a bunch of racist terrorists. You should have done it a long time ago.
If you listen to the CBC, and it's so easy to be, I can understand how people just get swept in. It really is. And if that's all that you listen to is CBC, CTV, Global, CNN, if you don't listen to anything on the other side, it makes perfect sense why so many people don't know anything different. It's actually scary, the power that mainstream media has and how they can influence people's minds. And when you're told something over and over and over again.
Well,
It's been the government's most powerful weapon through
Yeah.
all of this. It's like Rick says, this is 100% an information war.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you find, Brendan?
Hold up.
Leave it to Brendan. He finds it all.
See, and when you're dealing with something as complex as a piece of legislation like the Emergencies Act, formerly known as the War Measures Act, the average person doesn't pay attention to this stuff. They're too busy living their lives. They're not worried about becoming, political experts. They're not lawyers. They've never read these acts before. People don't know what's in them, right?
Right.
So when the CBC or the CTV reporters and commentators around there just say, nothing to worry about. It's beautiful. You guys should support this. They'll buy it. It's like going into Walmart and those products that they put in the center aisle on sale. It's like, you should buy this. This is on special. Great deal. Buy this. This
And
bright
we buy
shiny
it.
box of widget powder. Right?
Yes.
And we are, as I've said, we're at war. This is a declaration of war. I've said before on these broadcasts that even in I think the first night we were on, we are at war. This is a new form of warfare. What's the first thing an army or an invading country does when they take over a country? What's the first thing that a dictator does? He takes over the radio and TV stations.
Yeah.
That's
Big time.
why. Yeah, because now he controls the flow of information.
That's right.
The pen is mightier than the sword, and broadcasting, television stations, radio, the internet, that's the most powerful tool of all, the most powerful weapon. People need to be mindful of that every time they tune in the state-funded broadcasters and the state-funded newspapers, online entities, whatever you want to call them, the media.
Yes. Yeah. It's really unfortunate that we don't have any really real right-leaning mainstream media in Canada. It's really unfortunate.
Like everything else, they've been chipping and chipping and chipping away at all of that. And if you go back, they used to have Sun TV, which had a conservative slant to it, right? And they weren't able to survive because the government wouldn't help them get established on cable systems.
Yeah.
The CRTC would not help them. So they without cable market penetration, they were dead in the water. They couldn't survive. So that, don't tell me that isn't intentional. There was a systematic campaign at the time. I remember with many of my media colleagues who were lefties, to make sure that they didn't survive. They wanted those guys shut down.
Yeah.
And those were in more moderate times.
I got the info here. So the number of independent senators is 42. Conservative is 16. There's something called the Progressive Senate Group, and they have 14. There's something called the Canadian Senators Group, and they have 13. There's currently 6 non-affiliated and 14 vacant. And there is...
I wonder what all that means.
Well, as I recall, and it's been a while since I've really looked at it. Last time I looked at it, and it has been a while.
Okay.
When you're in power, you get to a point, right?
Right.
And last time I checked, the Conservatives had appointed more than the Liberals had.
Okay.
It was close, but there were still just slightly more conservative appointed senators.
Yeah, it's looking more like most of them that are in there have been appointed by Trudeau at this point. Looking at the list I have.
Really? No Harper? No Harpers?
There's a bunch of Harpers in there, but most of them were appointed by Trudeau. And I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong on this because you got the fancy piece of paper in political science there, Rick Walker. When you are,
I'm getting old, Brendan. So and as I said, I'm out of semi-retirement, and I I haven't been paying as close attention to it as I used to. So
This is old knowledge. I
But you're
believe
smart.
I'm stuck in the 1980s, man.
so. Once you're brought into the Senate, you're there for life. Is that correct?
And loving every minute of it.
What?
What's your question? What are you going to ask them?
I just asked it.
Oh.
When you're brought into the
yeah,
Senate,
it is a lifelong appointment. Yes.
Oh, yes, yes.
If you're a senator.
Yeah.
Unless
Sounds
you're
like-
turfed in some way because you've done something improper.
Or you die.
Or
like
you
Mike Duffy.
But then it's not life anymore, right?
True.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you're Mike Duffy and they make a big deal out of a $30,000 thing and, but then turn around and have $1 billion. Don't get me started. Doesn't matter. Oh my. But the point is the country is in peril tonight. And it's not because of the truckers who are out there exercising their right to free speech. And in fairness to police and the interim chief, whose tone tonight, honestly, I felt much more comfortable with. I might not agree with everything they're about to do, but the focus with him seemed to be back more on public safety, and I'm okay with that. And I'm feeling better about that. Okay, that's always should be the priority. Good for him. And but the country is in peril tonight. The country is facing an existential threat because of the prime minister and his use and invocation of the Emergencies Act, which is really the War Measures Act, as we've, I think, illustrated here tonight. And the information war continues. That's why we're here. We're fighting we're fighting on the information front through this podcast, videocast, broadcast. And it's saying to me that this is, I knew we had to do something, Brendan, as we talked about it when we resurrected this news channel, right? But as we've gotten into this more, I'm realizing more and more how incredibly important what we're doing and what other independent journalists are doing, how important it all is, how critical it really is. Because if we weren't on here talking about this, if Rebel News wasn't doing what they're doing, if True North wasn't doing what they're doing, if some of these other independents like Kian Bexty, who's doing an awesome job, and Lauren Southern and a lot of these other independents out there, if they weren't doing what they're doing, people would have no idea. Yeah. A lot of the people would just not have access to any other information. There would be no balance. And as we saw in that news conference with the mainstream media and the police chief, every question was just reinforcing the government position on the protest, which was they were in support of why aren't you shutting it down? Why aren't you doing more to shut it down? Why aren't you being more aggressive about shutting it down? Why didn't you do something sooner to shut it down? It's like it has to be shut down. There's nothing in sympathy or in support of the position of, what about their free speech, or what are you doing to preserve their rights?
Or why haven't you gone and spoken to them, Justin Trudeau?
Exactly.
And the biggest thing, so with the mainstream media, I can't ignore, it spins. Every time.
Yes. Yeah.
I just want to add to that when Chris Barber was arrested, there was, I think, 1 or 2 people that were in close proximity of Chris Barber at the time that were able to obtain lives. But boy, oh boy, CBC News was there.
Oh, really?
They were there just at the right moment.
Oh, yes. I can tell you, as from because I worked as a reporter for a long time, had relationships with many police services, always very, very good. I always tried to be balanced and impartial, and I was able to win the trust of officers. And when you do that, you do get information. And if they trust you, that you're not going to burn them, right? They will call you. Some officers will call you and say, hey, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. And if they trust you. You might get sometimes you'll get special tips and say, you go over there and do that and you'll get the shot. Be there at such and such a time because that's what's going to go on. They have to trust you because they have to know that you're not going to spill the beans, right? And tell somebody who ought not be told, or go on the air and say, the cops are going to be there at 7:00, right? On the air. So, but when in my day, it was more about making sure that you didn't jeopardize an investigation or put somebody's safety at risk by putting information out there prematurely, stuff like that, so that you could be in position and get the story. And I could talk about even being embedded with police, which raised for me some ethical questions and some professional issues for me. That could be a discussion for another night. But 25 years plus at CTV, plus other years in radio and print, and I understand how it all works, and that's why CBC was there. They were obviously tipped off. But the problem that I'm having with some of what I'm seeing with regard to that is it's not just those reporters having the trust of cops. Yep. It's that a lot of this is politically motivated these days. They want the CBC there to make sure they get the shot because they're going to spin the story in just the right way and convey the information in the way that they want it told. Right? But anytime I ever did anything with the cops, it was always, thank you very much for the information, but they never held me to account saying, why didn't you report it this particular way? They never told me what to say or how to say it.
Well, they don't have to anymore because they it's very clear where they get their marching orders from. And we've already stated here that they're cheerleading this whole thing on now.
I don't know. I just don't know.
Yes, and it raises, larger ethical issues for police too. Like the Police Services Board, the mayor, even Justin Trudeau, they're not supposed to direct police.
Yeah.
But what have we seen sort of going on? We know there's stuff been going on behind the scenes at the Ottawa Police Service in the past week. The chief resigned. Why did that happen? Because there was all kinds of pressure on him, and then the chair of the Police Services Board got involved. And I mean, what the heck is really going on there? And then are police really, are they possibly being directed, maybe indirectly, because of these kinds of actions being taken behind the scenes? If you're sort of forcing a police chief out and bringing somebody else in, are you not sort of manipulating police procedure or policy or the way that things are being implemented? Because that guy wasn't hardline enough. We need somebody who's willing to kind of get the job done and get on with it, right? Get that guy out of there. Get that other guy in there, right? So if you're controlling that from a human resources point of way, then if that guy's not doing what you want, you just get rid of him. Bring in this other guy, then he'll do what we want. I don't have to tell him what to do, so I'm still within the definition of and the legal definition of what we're supposed to do or not do. But really, you're manipulating the situation to get the outcome that you want, right? And I'm not saying that the interim. This is just a theory, okay? I'm not saying this is actually being done. I'm not accusing anyone of doing anything improper, but it's just it raises these questions and these ethical questions. And maybe you are even within the letter of the law doing these things, but are you really within the spirit of the legislation? Are you really still acting ethically?
Well, not only that, I mean the way they kind of force Slolly out, which is what the word out in the background is, like all the mainstream media is making that claim basically, is they would have had to work out something with his contract to basically buy him out. So it would have probably cost like all kinds of money to get rid of him.
We don't know what was really going on behind the scenes there, right? No. We don't know why he really resigned. I'm skeptical of these stories that say he was a bully behind the scenes. It seems like we've been talking about the media being used to smear people. And anytime I see the media smearing someone, I always question it. Why are they smearing that guy? Is it because he's suddenly become a political opponent to someone?
Yeah.
So I'm just not buying that at face value. And as I said the other night, Brendan, maybe Chief Slolly, who I was extremely critical of the other day, maybe he wasn't as bad a guy as I thought.
Right.
Maybe he stepped down because he wasn't willing to go as far as they wanted him to go.
Yeah.
And he was pushing back, and he's probably sitting there saying, "You don't direct me. I'm the police chief. We're arm's length from the police services where we're arms." And I'm just speculating, right? I don't know. I'm just saying. Some of this stuff it just has a stench to it that just makes me feel very uncomfortable. And I hope I didn't misjudge the former chief too much. But, he's under a lot of political pressure. He stood up there the other night, and the language he was using, it made me really worried. I didn't like it because it didn't put public safety first. It put removal of the protesters first. But that's rhetoric that I knew was a response to people like that Diane Deans, the chair of the Police Services Board, and others, including the mayor, who are saying, get him out of there, including the prime minister, who has been spewing nothing but hate. So you're the police chief, you say what you got to say, and then you do what you actually do. And
I have, sorry to interrupt here, I have something to let you know. So I just got a message from an individual. It looks like Tammy Litch, one of the organizers for the...
Tamara was, she was one of the main organizers. I've been bursting to say that too. She's been arrested.
Yeah, I got I don't have video documentation of it, but I do have this picture here.
Yeah, so it looks like they're, one by one taking out the organizers and the key players of the organizers.
That's definitely her.
It is her.
Yeah.
She assumed she would be arrested today. And I also got word that Chris Barber's already been released. So it is a catch and release. I mean, Big Law even told me, and if you look up the laws for mischief, they cannot hold them on that.
Right.
They can just charge them. So she will be released as well, but it looks like they're taking out the key players.
Mm-hmm. It's all optics, I think.
Exactly.
And I figured he'd be released shortly.
Yeah, so he's been released, so they're doing it fairly quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if all night long they're taking them out, the key players. I don't think that's going to stop the protesters, and they better be ready to arrest all of the protesters at once because they're not going to be able to. I mean, they're clearly coming like a thief in the night. I may go down and see how many people are around.
Yeah.
Don't get arrested.
Yeah, sorry, no video. Just that's all I got.
Yeah, I think that's all there is still images out there right now. She did post a video last night that I watched.
It was quite emotional, yeah.
Yeah, and she said in it that she was expecting to be arrested.
She thought she'd be the first.
Yeah.
Because she's been I think, one of the first organizers.
Yeah.
The key one.
Oh, yeah. Well, at least even, I would say, the best spoken.
Mm-hmm.
The best spoken.
She's been their spokesperson, right?
Yes. She's represented what she's done very well. Especially when it's like the government comes out and tries to call everybody Nazis and stuff like that. And she's like, I'm a Métis woman. Give me a break.
Yeah.
Just like we're all misogynists because, Carla and I are misogynists.
Well, I mean, but they used it all the way
I think
across.
Rhonda is, but I'm not sure about Carla.
I think Justin Trudeau just thinks that everybody is every gender because why would you call an entire group misogynist?
I don't know.
Yes.
That's a whole other topic for another night, Rick.
How long ago was she arrested? Do we know when?
It's
when
very
it happened?
recent. I just started getting people sending it to me while we've been on here in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
it looks like if you look outside of the picture,
it's recent.
It's snowing. It's snowing. It's about this time of night.
It's within the hour, I think.
This was posted to Twitter at 8:40. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say between 8 and 9 p.m.
Yep. So it's beginning, right? That's the thing. This morning, I woke up to an alert of sorts, right? And there was this trucker guy. I'm not going to give you his name. I think everybody knows who it was, but I don't want to use his
Same
name.
alert
because-
I got.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I'm
I
like-
got it too.
And he's been criticized heavily.
Yes, he
for
has.
it. But
He's
he,
a
I
little
don't think
rough around the edges. That's all.
Yeah, and I don't think that he meant. He means well, right? And I think he's trying to do good things in his own way. So when I started hearing what he was saying, and then I started to check out other information, and then his information started to spread to others who started to spread his information. But what I found was the stuff was true. The buses were there. All those cruisers were there, right?
Yeah.
And what we've seen today is even though they didn't come in riot gear, we did see a huge increase in the police presence in the Parliament Hill area.
But
they were just wearing street. What's that?
But where did they go? Like all day long, I was watching them come in their regular groups, a little bit larger, like 10 to 15, 10 to 16 officers. And they were mostly OPP and RCMP. They would walk along Wellington Street and then disappear. And you wouldn't see them. Whereas in the previous days when the crowds were larger, they would stand in different areas. But you would kind of see them go by, but then they were gone.
Well, as
So
I
all
said,
day-
as I
all
said
day
in
long,
my
I thought they were assembling. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I said this in one of the emergency broadcasts earlier today. I think they were using them for intelligence and surveillance, so they can surveil, see what's going on in the crowd, single these guys out. Now you know that Chris guy is over there. They're radioing over. He's going down this street. He's over there. So they can strategically pick them, right? Take them out, pick them out. This is what they're doing. And so those officers are on the street and they're milling about and they're here and they're there and they're probably going.
But they
into
weren't
buildings
milling. They were strictly walking.
Yeah, but they're just walking around and then they're going to a building and they're looking out a window and they've got a plan, right? I mean, I don't know where they're going, but they're cops and they're good at what they do. So I suspect
exactly.
that that's part of what they were doing today.
Just the tone with them was so different. Like I said, they would come in a group and they would go and stand somewhere and watch, and you'd see them interacting with one another, talking with the people, with the crowd. But they were literally just walking by, eyes on the crowd, eyes on what was happening. They were all business, and then they were gone. They never stopped moving.
Yeah.
And I found that very strange because I'm like, man, there's a lot of cops, but where are they going? So I think you're right, Rick Walker.
I'm not always right, though. And when I'm wrong, who am I ever wrong?
No, but that gels well with me.
Yeah, I can
Tomorrow's
give people
another
a
day.
chance to speak. Yes, it is. Yep.
So, with that being said, we are at the 3 hour and 17-minute mark. I think it is time that we say adieu, mon amis. If everybody
That's
is
good.
in agreement.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you for inviting me.
Our privilege.
It's privilege having
And
you, Rhonda.
I'm supporting you from afar, Carla.
Thank you. Thank
Well,
you.
with everybody, with that being said, if you want to bring up the link there, Rick Walker, before
Sure.
I close out here. So if you would be so kind, if you are interested in helping us out, Carla has incurred a lot of expenses over there in Ottawa. And so if you wish to support the show and what we do, please go to freedomreporters.com to make a donation. You can also help us out by liking and subscribing and hitting the bell for notifications. With that being said, it's been great being here with you all to discuss all these current events and issues. My name is Brendan Kennedy. I'm the host of the Flow of Discourse podcast. Good night. Thank you.
And
Go
my
ahead,
name,
you guys sign off too.
okay, and my name is Carla Olson, and I am on the ground here in Ottawa. I'm just going to remind you to be kind and be Canadian.
And I'm Rhonda Jubenville, and I live here in Chatham, and I support the truckers. And I hope and pray that everything works out.
Okay, and now that you've supported the truckers, you'll be going to jail soon too. And
It's okay. I said it. I'm good with it.
And I'm Rick Walker with Maverick Multimedia. And to all those who have donated, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate the support. And if you didn't donate, you're just watching, we're that too. We're just glad people are out there watching and getting the information. And yeah, with that being said, we will catch you all on the flip side tomorrow night with more coverage of Freedom Convoy 2022 cruising to the Capitol, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Catch you then. Thanks.